Chapter 1784. It's not a bad thing to be a spiritualist, Chen Zhao said. Actually, there are some spiritualists around us. They live normal lives too. Let me think about it, Amy said. Tell me about Engelite. Chen Zhao avoided the part about Angelite's broken arm. He emphasized how Engelite subdued demons and monsters. Colin's eyes lit up as he listened. He felt that his father was living the life he wanted. Just like a secret agent, he used the identity of an ordinary employee to hide his true identity. He wanted that kind of life too. But there were 3 mountains in front of him. His parents and Chen Zhao. If they didn't agree, he wouldn't be able to join the supernatural organization. Mr. Chen, is your family spiritualist too? Not all of them, Chen Zhao said. My daughter experienced life and death on the day she was born. Will you let her become a spiritualist? Of course. Why not? Fate chose her, so there's no need to run away. Also, becoming a spiritualist doesn't mean you have to fight. Having abilities that others don't might not be a bad thing. Amy thought about it. It was true. She even hoped that she could become a spiritualist too. Of course, she also knew that she couldn't force it. This society is actually very dangerous. I've lived in China for 25 years and I've never seen a gun in real life. But in the half a year I've been in LA, I've experienced 5 shootings, 1 bank robbery, and 2 kidnappings. If I didn't have special abilities, I'd probably be dead already. Can you avoid shootings with these abilities? Shootings happen randomly, no one can predict it. Of course, if Ceylon could learn and practice divination magic, she might be able to avoid these hidden dangers. Also, take Corin for example, with his speed, a normal person with a gun would not be able to hit him at all. Then, Chen Zhao sent Amy's family back. He didn't call Engelite. He believed that Amy would definitely call him. As for how they would talk, that was their family's business. This kind of trouble should be dealt with by themselves. The next day, after Fei Lai went to work, Chen Zhao took the 2 kids and Portia to the headquarters of the organization. Portia didn't know why Chen Zhao was here. There was only one old man, Aduz, guarding the headquarters. Moreover, she always felt uncomfortable here. Chen Zhao entered the warehouse. It had been 3 days since the equipment had been installed. Chen Zhao could use this opportunity to try. Of course, he locked the door first. In case Portia came in. Little Jerlin and little Larissa were left in Portia's care. Chen Zhao punched a hole in the wall opposite the ring-shaped sensor. Then, he turned on the device. Chen Zhao stood at the other end of the ring-shaped instrument. As long as Chen Zhao passed through the ring-shaped device, the device would record his data. This instrument was originally used to measure the speed of artillery shells. However, there was no problem with using it to test other objects. He took off his clothes and changed into the dragon scale underwear. He took a deep breath. He assumed the starting position of a track and field athlete. Release. Chen Zhao kicked with all his strength and shot out like a cannonball. Chen Zhao instantly passed through the ring-shaped sensor. However, Chen Zhao felt that he hadn't let go of his body just now, so his speed wasn't at his peak. Chen Zhao returned to the device and checked if it had measured his speed. The screen showed 991 meters per second, which was Mach 2. 91. Chen Zhao went back to the starting point and tried again. The same process. Release. Chen Zhao felt that his condition was even better this time. There was an obvious improvement. 1,125 meters per second, Mach 3. 3, not bad. It seemed that after running twice, the cells in Chen Zhao's body had become active again. Chen Zhao ran again. This time, he increased his speed to Mach 3. 32, but not by much. For the next few times, Chen Zhao kept trying. It hovered around Mach 3. 35. After 10 tries, Chen Zhao had basically confirmed his running speed. Then, he tested his flying speed. Chen Zhao did superhuman movements and passed through the ring-shaped sensor. The first time was Mach 4. 25. Then, he tried 10 more times. His speed was maintained at Mach 4. 3. He had a conclusion about his running and flying speed in his normal state. From now on, Chen Zhao would try in his complete state. Clone, all spells return to 1, Dark Assimilation, Eye of Power, Mighty God. All the statuses were added to Chen Zhao's body. He had already become a small giant. The ring-shaped sensor was only 3 meters in diameter. He clearly couldn't pass through it by running. Chen Zhao directly tested his flying speed. Chen Zhao exploded at full speed, creating a strong gust of air. Mach 14. 88. This was the result of the first test. However, Chen Zhao felt that he could still increase his speed. Then, he did the second test. Mach 15. 25. The increase was obvious. In his complete state, Chen Zhao was basically the fastest object flying in Earth's atmosphere. Even the rockets with the highest thrust couldn't surpass him in the atmosphere. This speed was unimaginable from the perspective of normal creatures. But for the more powerful existences that Chen Zhao knew. For example, the Great Lords, Secondary Demon Kings, and Great Demon Kings. Chen Zhao estimated that they could all crush him in speed. It was the same even if they weren't good at speed. Just like the current Chen Zhao, he wasn't good at speed either. But Chen Zhao could still crush an elite in speed. The difference between them was in level. So, when Chen Zhao faced the more powerful existences, they also had the ability to crush Chen Zhao in level. Moreover, it wasn't just 1 or 2 levels. In fact, there was a huge difference. Mr. Aduz, where did the boss go? Portia held little Geraldine's hand and carried little Larissa's. I don't know. Aduz knew that Chen Zhao had entered the warehouse. That's weird. Where did that sound come from? It's been making that noise since an hour ago. It wasn't here last time. Miss Portia, have you eaten? Our restaurant is open. Is there anyone else here other than you? Portia asked in confusion. She didn't notice Aduz's crude change of topic. Let's go. Geraldine really likes our food. Portia thought about it in confusion. Why did it feel weird? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1785. Portia entered the restaurant. She realized that the food section was already filled with all kinds of food. They were all prepared food. But there wasn't a single person. Just the few of them. Mr. Aduz, where's everyone? Who? A chef and a restaurant needs waiters, right? There's no waiters, Aduz said casually. Take whatever you want. Portia realized that there was indeed no one else in the restaurant. But who was the one who made all these dishes? It can't be made by a ghost, right? But the food was all hot. There were only a few people here. Could they finish all the food? Just then, Chen Zhao walked in. Seeing Chen Zhao, Portia retracted her previous thoughts. With Chen Zhao here, they could definitely finish it. Clang, Portia jumped in fright. But it wasn't a big deal. The spoon had just fallen to the ground. But the spoon was on the table. No one touched it. How did it suddenly fall? Portia obviously didn't know that there were a few invisible people here. Don't look around when you're eating. Chen Zhao placed the food before Portia and slammed the table. It wasn't the first time she saw Chen Zhao eat. But every time, he would give her a shock. Was he really not human? Where did the food go after he stuffed it into his mouth? Not just Qin Zhao. Little Jerlin ate quite a lot too. In Qin Zhao's family, only little Larissa was normal. She was drinking milk from a bottle. Qin Zhao and Fei Lai were planning to wean little Larissa in the next 2 days. Some children were easier to wean because they had already received other foods in advance, so they could quickly eat other foods as their staple food after weaning. Some children were more patient and would cry for 2 or 3 days after weaning. They only wanted milk and nothing else. Little Jerlin had experienced it once, but she was very adaptable. She didn't cry much and was successfully weaned in less than a day. She only woke up hungry at night during the weaning. If Qin Zhao and Fei Lai didn't grit their teeth and persevere, they probably would have failed. If they failed once, the second weaning would be even more difficult. Normally, it was best for children to be weaned between 1 and 2 years old. The digestive ability of a 1-year-old child was strong enough to accept most food. Some children did not stop drinking milk until they were 8 or 9 years old, or even 10 years old. In fact, this had become a burden for the child's growth. To a certain extent, giant infants' physical fitness and immune systems were weaker than children of the same age. Of course, little Larissa was the same as little Jerlin. They were both stronger and healthier than their peers. Milk was rich in nutrients, but the human body needed more trace elements. The richer the diet, the better the body's development and health. Take little Jerlin as an example. Although her growth and development were not extraordinary, however, her physique was far better than that of other children her age. Even children older than her were not necessarily better than her. Little Jerlin could soak in the seawater for half a day. After eating and drinking, Qin Zhao patted Adu's shoulder. Adus, I'm leaving. Oh. Have a safe trip, guild leader. Along the way, Portia was puzzled. Whether it was in the Mingyue villa or in that restaurant. Portia couldn't understand why they couldn't find a chef. What was there to hide from a chef? Boss, where are the chefs in your family and that restaurant hiding? Why are you guys always so secretive? I already said that our chefs are ugly. They can't meet guests. What about that restaurant? They're twins. They're both ugly, so they can't meet guests. Portia's face darkened. Even if you're lying, can't you be more careful? If the chefs know what you're saying, I wonder what they'll think. Just then, Qin Zhao received a call from Felwood Cisco. Felwood, what's up? Mr. Chen, the main part of the Mirror Lake project has been completed. When do you have time to send someone over to monitor the project? I'm free today, Qin Zhao said. At the same time, he told Portia, let's go to Mirror Lake. When they reached Mirror Lake, Qin Zhao parked the car in the temporary parking lot. Little Jerlin had been very excited about returning to Mirror Lake. But when she saw the lake that had changed drastically, she was a bit dazed. Maybe she thought that she had gone the wrong way. Little Larissa had no impression of Mirror Lake at all. Felwood Cisco walked over. Mr. Chen, Miss Portia. It had been less than half a month since Portia's last visit. However, the Mirror Lake project progressed quickly. For one, it was because of Felwood Cisco's urging. For another, the latter part of the project wasn't difficult. The most difficult part of the project was wading into the water. After that was done, the main part of the project was no longer difficult. Qin Zhao looked at the completed main part of the building. He was quite satisfied with the design. Dad, is this our Mirror Lake? Little Jerlin asked. Mirror Lake was still Mirror Lake, but the buildings were clearly different from what she remembered. Of course. Don't you remember? But what about our previous home? Dad didn't think it looked good, so he rebuilt it. Portia was speechless at Qin Zhao's parenting style. She didn't know the actual situation. She really thought that Qin Zhao had demolished and rebuilt it because it wasn't good. But with her understanding of Qin Zhao, he really might do something like that. Because of the project, the water at the edge of Mirror Lake was a bit turbid. But it didn't affect the water quality of the entire lake. After all, the project was only going on at the edge of Mirror Lake. Moreover, Felwood Cisco was trying his best to ensure that the water quality of Mirror Lake wouldn't be affected. After all, Mirror Lake still had to provide water for the brewery. There wasn't much to see at the construction site. The current progress was around 60%. It was a mess. Qin Zhao couldn't tell if it was good or bad. Qin Zhao just watched from the outside. He'd leave the quality inspection to the professional department. Mr. Felwood, Qin Zhao said, it's best to expand your company in the next 2 years. Felwood Cisco pricked up his ears. His heart skipped a beat. Was it because of the private airport Qin Zhao mentioned earlier? Mr. Qin, my company's people should be able to handle the private airport. It's not a private airport. Qin Zhao shook his head. I can't reveal more information right now, but the project might be dozens of times larger than the private airport. Chapter 1786. Felwood's heart skipped a beat. Dozens of times more work than a private airport. What was Qin Zhao trying to do? Of course, I can't give this project to your company alone, Qin Zhao said. But I'll try my best to give you the project as long as it's within your company's capabilities. Felwood's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Qin Zhao didn't tell him, but Felwood felt that Qin Zhao didn't tell him because it was a trade secret. But the few words Qin Zhao had revealed were enough to shock him. If he could take over this project, even if it wasn't all of it. After finishing this job, he would be able to retire. As for Qin Zhao lying to him, Felwood had never considered this problem. For one, Qin Zhao didn't need to lie to him at all. Moreover, in the past 2 years, Qin Zhao had been giving him all kinds of projects. Qin Zhao was now his company's biggest and most important client. Suspecting Qin Zhao was akin to digging his own grave. However, he couldn't figure out what project Qin Zhao had that was dozens of times more than an airport. It seemed like he had to change his company's development strategy. Felwood thought. Qin Zhao didn't stay at the construction site for long. He looked around and left with his child. This is where we came from yesterday. This area is the territory of the withered tree ghouls. If you go any further, you will be surrounded by a large number of withered tree ghouls. It will be very troublesome if you fall into their territory. Ruan Faxi pointed at a valley in front of them. We'll go from the outside, West said. There's no need to enter the valley. Dylan had been following the team, but he was in the middle. This was to prevent him from running away. Dylan was half-hearted, but his role in the team couldn't be doubted. Not only did he know the terrain of this area like the back of his hand, but he also had a special spell called the Spirit of Guidance. Of course, this spell had nothing to do with Buddhism. It was a type of prophecy spell. It could tell the correct direction through divination. However, this spell had a disadvantage. If the same question was asked repeatedly, the mana consumption would double. For example, they were looking for the Nordic giants. The first time they used this spell to ask for the correct direction, it didn't consume much mana. The second time he asked the same question, the magic power would double. The third time, it would double again, and so on. If a person's magic is strong enough, they can find almost anyone or anything. But no one could use it infinitely. Doring's magic power was very average. He couldn't be compared to the members of the Magic Association. Compared to ordinary spiritualists, Dylan's strength was also very ordinary. Therefore, he could only use the Spirit of Guidance 3 times at most. Doring had already used the Spirit of Guidance once before. Therefore, he still had 2 chances to use the guidance spirit. This was also why West had approached him and offered him such a high price in the first place. $200,000 for 1 month's time. One had to know that even hiring a spiritualist would only cost slightly more than an ordinary person. More, were the tooth of the fire dragon. It can dispel some of the cold. Ruan Faxi tossed a pendant to Moore. In their group, Mo Air and Rissa were the youngest. Risa could absorb the heat around her, so she didn't need to worry about catching a cold at all. Moore, on the other hand, was a big kid who was still growing. He'd caught a cold last night. However, Moore always had the mentality that he was a man and an adult. He felt that everyone in the group should be treated the same. He would eat what others ate. He would use what others used. But he clearly didn't have the ability, yet he liked to show off. Moore, wear it, West said. Otherwise, I'll call the president and have him come and take you away. Okay. I'll wear it. Suddenly, Doring noticed the tooth of the fire dragon hanging around Moore's neck. Doring's heart skipped a beat. It was faintly emitting pure flame power. Could it really be a dragon tooth? If it really was a dragon tooth, these guys were too extravagant. They actually hung the dragon tooth around their necks like a pendant. If given to an alchemist, this dragon tooth could definitely be made into a high-quality magic tool. These Americans were indeed a bunch of nouveau riche. They didn't have any ability at all, but they were rich. Doring didn't know that the dragon tooth hanging around Moore's neck was of the lowest quality. It was the kind that nobody wanted. Ruan Faxi couldn't be bothered with magic at all. He simply polished it and pierced it to use as a pendant. The association didn't have too many dragon parts. For example, each of them was wearing a tight-fitting dragon scale undergarment. Who didn't have 1 or 2 dragon magic tools? But even if he said that to Doring, he probably wouldn't believe it either. Doring's eyes flashed. He had to find an opportunity to get this dragon tooth pendant. The fog seems to have dispersed today. Yes, it's much easier to walk. Everyone was in a better mood. Nobody liked walking in the fog anymore. Because of the fog, even their companions could only see blurry figures, which was a huge problem for them. Their faces were covered in mist after walking for a while. It was very uncomfortable. It seems to be dry around here. There should be some firewood. Why don't we rest here today and catch some game? We haven't had cooked food for days, Gaia suggested. Although compressed food could also fill one's stomach, not everyone could stand the boredom of compressed food. Gaia, Klaus, and the Lightning team were retired soldiers. They could barely tolerate it. But the others couldn't. West thought for a moment. All right, then we'll rest here today. Doring was completely speechless at these Americans. They had only walked for half a day and they were already stopping. With their speed, when would they be able to find the giants? Doring looked down on West and the others even more. But this was good. Demas had already sent him a message. He had already contacted the Sacred Flames sect. The slower they walked, the earlier they could meet the people from the Sacred Flames sect. It was impossible for this motley crew to fight against the people from the Sacred Flames sect. That group of Sacred Flames sect disciples were all extremely vicious and evil. They were perverse and vicious, and their methods were extremely cruel. As long as they were their enemies, there was almost no one left alive. Doring looked forward to seeing their expressions when they met the Sacred Flames sect. Chapter 1787. Today, Portia followed Chen Zhao to Seagate again. The people from Seagate reported the progress of the yacht to Chen Zhao. Of course, there wasn't much progress. The yacht had just officially started construction. However, the person in charge of Seagate invited Chen Zhao to visit their headquarters warmly. However, Chen Zhao wasn't really interested. He had to go all the way to their company in Italy. So, Chen Zhao could only say that he was busy. After leaving Seagate, Portia stared at Chen Zhao speechlessly. "Boss, did you invest all your money in luxury goods?" Chen Zhao's Mirror Lake villa was only worth $10 to $20 million at most. The private airport and private jet were still in preparation. However, Chen Zhao had actually invested more than $300 million into this private yacht. Portia couldn't imagine how luxurious a yacht worth $300 million was. More importantly, Chen Zhao already had a yacht, the Hydra. In Portia's eyes, the Hydra was unimaginably luxurious. But the Hydra was only $80 million. How luxurious would a new yacht that was 4 times more expensive than the Hydra be? "I'm rich, so I can do whatever I want," Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Up until now, Portia hadn't seen many of Chen Zhao's valuable properties. Marina Restaurant was one, but it clearly couldn't support all of Chen Zhao's top luxury goods. She knew that Chen Zhao had a brewery, but to Portia, a brewery alone wasn't enough. In fact, the brewery was Chen Zhao's biggest source of income. Dashin beer had already spread across the entire North American market with Mara Supermarket. Of course, the main market was still in California. The California beer market was completely dominated by Dashin. North America was also constantly eroding the market share of the former beer giants. The international brands had contacted Denver a few times, hoping to buy Dashin beer. Of course, it ended in failure. Chen Zhao sold the golden chicken that laid eggs and then invested a large amount of cash that he didn't know where to go. Chen Zhao was either crazy or stupid. The only thing that could beat Dashin beer now was its production capacity. But no one could solve this problem. Dashin beer's production capacity wasn't limited by food. It was limited by the water of Mirror Lake. The only water source of Mirror Lake was the small waterfall hanging in front of the villa. The flow of this waterfall was basically the largest output of Dashin beer. Of course, so far, Dashin beer had not reached its true production capacity. Ever since Mountain Beer's production doubled 2 months ago, Chen Zhao's income also doubled. Denver had also transformed from an unemployed man who had been driven out of his home by Happy Dollar Beer into a billionaire. Even if he only held 5% of the shares, this 5% of shares, whether in terms of value or long-term stable income, was enough to make him a billionaire. Of course, he didn't completely trust Denver. But apart from 1 or 2 spies, Chen Zhao had almost no restrictions on Denver. He and Chen Zhao were now bound by benefits, so he wouldn't do anything that would harm Chen Zhao's interests. Recently, Winnip had been trying to charm Chen Zhao again. She even asked Fei Lai to give him pillow talk. He wanted to buy some shares of Mountain Beer and even encouraged Chen Zhao to list Mountain Beer. Fortunately, Fei Lai knew what to do. After all, they were family now. She wouldn't do something that would harm her family's interests for Winnip. The value of Dashin Beer's shares was limitless. If Mountain Beer went public, it would hurt Chen Zhao the most because he was the absolute owner now. This was because he was the absolute shareholder now. Once Mountain Beer went public, his shares would be diluted. He would inevitably lose control of Mountain Beer. He would also lose long-term stable dividends. So, Chen Zhao definitely wouldn't let Mountain Beer go public. Of course, Amira and Denver, as shareholders, also tried their best to avoid going public. Going public would also harm their interests. This made Chen Zhao a bit annoyed with Winnip. Of course, no matter what, they were family. Chen Zhao wouldn't turn against Winnip. It was just that after being harassed a few times, Chen Zhao didn't even want to pick up Winnip's calls. "Boss, where are we going now?" "Find a place to eat lunch," Chen Zhao said. As expected, this guy had nothing to do every day. Other than buying things everywhere, he only did food. Portia and Chen Zhao found an open-air restaurant. Not long after they sat down, Chen Zhao met familiar people. It was Stephen's daughter, Daly Moore, and Nawat Singh. Daly Moore, Nawat Singh, Chen Zhao greeted. The two also saw Chen Zhao. They went up and sat beside him. Chen, long time no see. Daly Moore's expression was pretty good. It seemed that she was in a good mood recently. Chen, congratulations. The movie you invested in is a big hit. Kidnapping's global box office had already surpassed $3 billion. It had already slowed down. The only question now was whether it could break $4 billion. As Stephen's daughter, Daly Moore's company was Computer Special Effects. Most of her business was related to Hollywood. As a result, many Hollywood-related companies came to her recently to please her. They wanted to get close to her father. The company's performance increased greatly. Daly Moore was also very famous. Of course, she was more jealous of the huge returns that Chen Zhao's tens of millions of investment had gotten. In less than a year, Chen Zhao's investment of $30 million had gotten more than 20 times the investment. But she also knew that her funds couldn't enter Hollywood. She was only able to develop this secondary industry of movies because of Stephen, who was a mountain. Miss, you are my personal assistant, Portia, Chen Zhao said. Portia, this is Daly Moore, and this is Nawat Singh. Hello. Portia stood up and went to a nearby seat. She gave the table to Chen Zhao and the two girls. Nawat, you used weakness mirror on me last time. Let's try again. I want to see if I've improved recently. Nawat Singh remembered that she'd used weakness mirror to borrow Chen Zhao's left arm to teach her sister a hard lesson. Then I'll have to offend you. Nawat Singh had improved a lot recently. She also wanted to test it on Chen Zhao. Moreover, she had also mastered mirror magic, which was a step further than weakness mirror. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 1788. Mr. Chen, this time, I won't use weakness mirror. I'll use real mirror magic. No problem. Chen Zhao nodded. Weakness mirror, as the name suggested, was to copy the opponent's weakness and then create a magical connection. Then, it would attack the opponent by hurting themselves. Mirror image, on the other hand, was the ability to copy a certain spell of the opponent or a certain part of the opponent's body. Chen Zhao immediately felt a spell approaching him. But it was an invisible spell. It couldn't be seen or touched. He could only sense it. But the moment the spell touched Chen Zhao, it disintegrated. Chen Zhao's non-elemental constitution was effective. Normal directional spells wouldn't be effective against Chen Zhao. Unless the directional spell was shockingly powerful. If Nawat's had Tamamo no Mei's power, Chen Zhao's non-elemental constitution wouldn't have any effect. But Nawat's clearly didn't have that power. Nawat's was stunned for a moment. The feeling in her body was so strange. Did it work? Or did it fail? Wait. My magic is fading. Nawat stood up abruptly and stared at Chen Zhao in shock and anger. What did you do to me? What? Chen Zhao was confused too. What was the meaning of Nawat Singh's sudden accusation? My magic is fading. Magic fading. Chen Zhao was confused. No. Wait. Chen Zhao suddenly looked at Nawat Singh. Did her spell succeed? Did her sight successfully copy his non-elemental constitution? Daly Moore hit Nawat with a fireball. I need to confirm something. Nawat saw Chen Zhao's eyes. She didn't understand his intentions. But his magic fading didn't seem to be his own doing. Navots nodded at Dalymore. A small fireball rose from Dalymore's finger and she pointed at Navots. The fireball extinguished the moment it neared Navots. As expected. Chen, what's going on? Navots copied some of my abilities. She's immune to most directional spells. Even if it's an area of effect spell, as long as it doesn't exceed the upper limit, it'll disappear, Chen Zhao said. But Navots seems to have gotten rid of her magic too. Naut's lost her magic permanently. How long will the mirror image last? Chen Zhao asked. Half a day, Navots said gloomily. However, she was shocked by Chen Zhao's unimaginable ability. If he could replicate this ability without eliminating his own magic power, he would be almost invincible. Of course, this kind of invincibility was relative. It was definitely useless against Chen Zhao, the original master. Moreover, as the original owner of the non-elemental body, Chen Zhao wasn't affected by the spell's side effects. Even the thought of it was terrifying. No one could hit him with magic, and no one could hurt him with physical attacks. Actually, it wasn't that Chen Zhao wasn't affected by his elemental constitution. It was because his current cultivation system had changed from magical power to immortal power. However, Chen Zhao had only learned the neutral elemental constitution when his magic power had turned into immortal power. That was also a watershed. Navot Singh could replicate a non-elemental constitution. In a sense, she was already very powerful. Sorry, Chen, I was rude just now. Navots was very embarrassed. She'd misunderstood and thought that Chen Zhao had done something to her. Not far away, Portia was confused. Weren't Chen Zhao friends with those two women? They seemed to have had an intense argument just now. The woman even stood up in agitation. But then, they seemed to have reconciled. Portia filled in the blanks in her head. What relationship did Chen Zhao have with them? They were asking for a breakup fee or something. After lunch, Dalymore and Navots Singh left. Navots, what are you looking at? I saw you studying your arms for half a day. I'm studying the mirror image ability I copied from Chin. Isn't it just eliminating magic and magical power? Not just that. Navot Singh shook her head. This feeling is really addictive. Is it that comfortable? You haven't tried it before, so of course you can't understand, Navot said. When can I learn mirror image? You haven't even learned the weakness yet. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Suddenly, Dalymore slammed on the brakes. Your sister is here again. Dalymore turned to look at Navot Singh. This wasn't the first time. Navot Singh's sister, Okula Singh. She would harass Navot Singh once or twice a month. Of course, every time Okula appeared, he was very good at picking the right place. She would always calculate their route and attack in a place where there was no one. Dalymore often teased Navot Singh, saying that her sister was like a villain in a movie. She would harass her and then run. Okula's wind beasts blocked the front of the car. I won't get out, Dalymore said to Navots. You deal with it yourself. Navot's face was filled with helplessness. After getting off the car, he looked around. Nots Hingis saw the air flowing around her. At the same time, she saw 3 people hiding behind cover. The 3 of them had different colored cheese flowing around their bodies. One of them seemed to be red, the second was gray, and the third was yellow. Navots could easily identify the 3 of them. Okula, come out. I see you. Navot Singh didn't move. There was no movement. Okula seemed to be planning a sneak attack. Navot Singh was speechless. Her sister had come at the wrong time. She had borrowed power that didn't belong to her. Although Navot Singh didn't have any magic now. But right now, she was unprecedentedly powerful. Navot Singh even felt like she was invincible. Okula, Barbara Rush, and Domingo, I know you're hiding behind cover. Come out. Navot shouted again, you want these wind-howling beasts to attack me first, and then you can ambush me? To be honest, Navot Singh was surprised that her sister had found Barbara Rush and Domingo. Unfortunately, no matter how many people there were today, she was confident that she could defeat them. The power that didn't belong to her gave her courage. Chapter 1789. Barbara Rush and Dominguez were of the same family as Nawat Shingles and Okula Shingles. But the two of them clearly didn't get along with Navots. Instead, they shared the same interests as her sister, Okula. As a matter of fact, Okula and two others were blocking Navot Singh. Navot Shingles didn't even understand what kind of power she had. Of course, her enemies didn't understand either. After the last few attacks, Okula Singh realized that his sister wasn't that powerful. A few months ago, when Okula fought with her sister, she realized that her sister had an enhancement spell. But after he calmed down, Okula understood. That enhancement spell wasn't her sister's, but a mirror spell. After a few confrontations, Okula confirmed that her sister indeed didn't have any strengthening spells. Okula Shingles was fully prepared for this attack. However, for some unknown reason, his sister actually directly pointed out their intentions. The three of them could only walk out from behind cover. I told you, with our strength, there's no need to go through so much trouble, Barbara said unhappily. Barbara's face was filled with radicalism and excitement. Her palms were dyed red, not like normal flames. Instead, it was as bright as fresh blood. Barbara wasn't an elemental witch. She was a fury witch. Actually, it was similar to Tank. She became stronger through anger. The difference was that Tank turned anger into physical strength. Barbara, on the other hand, turned her anger into a scorching flame. Dominguez stood there calmly. Okula Singh wasn't a man who was good at trickery to begin with. Therefore, after being exposed by her own sister, she felt a little embarrassed. She was also a little shy and immediately attacked Navots to cover up her blushing face. A few howling wind beasts charged at Navots. Navot's body lightened and she flew up. Everyone present was stunned by this action, including Navot Singh himself. She didn't think that one day, she would be able to fly in the air. Navots just wanted to avoid the wind howler beast's attack, but he didn't expect his body to instinctively dodge into the air. Okula, Barbara, and Domingo all raised their heads to look at Navot Singh, who was in the air. Disbelief was written all over their faces. But Barbara was the first to react. She aimed both palms at Navots, who was in midair. Go to hell. Bang! Navot's body exploded violently. But after the flames, Navot Singh hovered in mid-air unscathed, looking down at everyone. Barbara Rush didn't believe that her powerful attack couldn't hurt Navot Singh. Navot Singh didn't have to do anything. Barbara Rush's attack couldn't hurt her at all. Navots didn't even need to defend. It had to be said that the deeper one experienced this powerful ability, the more powerful it was. Navot Singh was even more shocked. Navot's heart skipped a beat. Her body seemed to desire the surrounding elements very much. This time, Navot's decided to follow her body's instincts. Suddenly, Navot's body began to absorb the elements around her. In that instant, Navot's felt her body become very scary. Her body even grew to a height of 2 meters, and the loose clothes on her body also became tight. She couldn't absorb anymore. She would die. Navots was alarmed. She immediately stopped absorbing the elements. Okula, Barbara, and Domingo looked at Navots in disbelief. At this moment, a wind howler beast jumped up and bit Navot Singh's ankle. However, the wind howler beast's bite force couldn't even break Navot's skin at this moment. Navots quickly descended and crushed the wind beast that was biting his ankle with one foot. The ground was also crushed. Navots felt an indescribable power in her body. Navots took a step forward and punched the ground. Bang! With Navots as the center, the ground was like a wave, spreading out in all directions. In an instant, the ground within a radius of more than 30 meters was covered with spiderweb-like cracks. The few wind-howling beasts that were close to him were instantly affected by the shock wave and exploded. Okula Sinjith, Barbara Rush, and Dominguez were all stunned. What kind of power was this? It was too scary. Navot Singh looked at Okula, Barbara, and Domingo indifferently. Are you sure you still want to fight? Navots didn't even know how strong she was right now. But she was sure that she wasn't as strong as Chen Zhao. She seemed to have reached her limit in an instant when she absorbed the elements from the outside world. If Chen Zhao used this move, with his strong body, he would be more than 100 times stronger than himself. Navot Singh suddenly felt very lucky. Thank goodness Chen Zhao wasn't her enemy. Having an enemy like this was really a headache. No, it should be a very scary thing. And Nawat Hingis knew. This might just be one of Chen Zhao's abilities. When the Holy Infant Hurricane came, Navots and Delamore had seen Chen Zhao in that state. In the third night, which had never happened before in history, Chen Zhao fought from morning to midnight. As for the Holy Infant Hurricane, it was truly an evil spirit that resembled an army of thousands upon thousands. But without exception, Chen Zhao tore them all to pieces. It was also the first time they understood the difference between them. Navots didn't dare to say that she could compare to Chen Zhao with the power she displayed. But for Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo, it was already shocking enough. What kind of destructive power was this? If Navots really wanted to kill them, they wouldn't even have a chance to escape. Navots' attack was off the charts right now. Her defense was equally shocking. At the very least, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush and Domingo couldn't break his defense even if they worked together. Now, get out of my sight. Otherwise, I really won't be able to control myself and kill you. Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo's faces were ashen. They'd sworn to stop Navots, but in the end, they fled with their tails between their legs. They couldn't fight anymore. If they really did, they'd really die here. Chapter 1790. Okula Singh, Barbara Rush and Domingo ran away with their tails between their legs. Meanwhile, Navots didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to get out of her current state. After returning to Daly Moore's car, she sat in the seat with great difficulty. She was 23 meters tall, but the car was still a little small for her. Daly Moore stared at Navots with glowing eyes. Navots, you're too powerful. It's nothing to do with me. It's a completely copied ability from Chen. It's too scary. I have to learn weakness image and mirror magic as soon as possible. Daly Moore was suddenly filled with energy. Even if you learn mirror magic, you still shouldn't copy Chen's ability unless it's necessary. The consequences will be very serious. What's serious? That's the trouble with strengthening. Mirror magic can copy the opponent's ability, but after using the ability, it'll be a huge burden on the body. I remember last time I used weakness image and copied Chen's left arm. After the magic faded, my left arm was useless for 3 days. I couldn't lift it at all. I used so much power just now. I think I won't be able to get out of bed for a month. That's serious. That's the side effect of mirror magic. Otherwise, do you think this magic array is so perfect? But it's not bad to experience that. You know, you were like a god just now. No, you're still like a god now. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the car without any warning. Oh no! Navot Singh and Delamore exclaimed at the same time. Dalymore couldn't brake in time and the car crashed into the person. Bang! The expected scene of the person being sent flying did not happen. The front of the car seemed to have crashed into an electric pole. It instantly caved in. The airbag popped out from the steering wheel, and Dalymore was confused. But Navots broke through the window in an instant and pounced towards that person. She hadn't dispelled mirror magic yet. She still had endless power. The person was pushed to the ground by Navots. He was also shocked. He didn't expect Navots to be able to push him to the ground. Who are you? Navots grabbed the man's neck with one hand. The man realized that he had overestimated his own strength and underestimated Navot Singh's. He had originally thought that he would be the one to grab Navot's neck. But now, the situation was reversed. How could this be? Why was this happening? The man's palms suddenly glowed with black light as he struck towards Navot's chest. But when his palms hit Navot Singh's chest, the magic attached to his palms dissipated. What was going on? Was Navot Singh that powerful? Who are you? Navots increased the strength of her palm. The man's neck was being deformed by a tremendous force. Eastern Unending Pillar King, lend me your strength, the man suddenly shouted. Navot's shingles could feel the man's power increasing. But it still didn't surpass him. She was more concerned about the magic this man was using. He was praying to the Eastern Endless Pillar King, one of the 5 gods of the Roma, and borrowing his power. In other words, he was the same as her, a Roma. To borrow the Pillar King's power, one first had to become a believer of the Pillar King. The legend of the 5 Pillar Kings was an internal belief of the Roma. It was an extremely small group. The others didn't have this belief. Just then, Navot Singh turned around. She saw Dalymore's head bleeding in the car behind her. She seemed to be seriously injured. Navots let go of the person in his hands. He was very strong. He was very powerful, but compared to her current state, he wasn't even worth mentioning. Navots wasn't worried that he could hurt or defeat him. But just then, the man suddenly attacked. But he didn't attack Navot Singh directly. Instead, he reached out and grabbed Navot Singh's earlobe. Navot Singh instantly realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The man forcefully tore the earlobe off. Ah! Navot Singh screamed in pain. Her ear was bleeding profusely. Navot Singh instantly felt her strength rapidly slipping away. Her earlobe was called Heal. It could extend the duration of all sustained spells by double. The mirror image spell could only be maintained for such a long time through the earlobe. Navot Singh felt weak. But before the power completely dissipated, Navots punched the man's face with all his might. Ah! The man's face was punched by Navot Singh and he flew more than 10 meters away. Navot Singh fell to the ground in pain. She had no strength left to chase. The man stood up shakily. He looked at Navot Singh and then at the earlobe in his hand. He was hesitant. Should he kill Navot Singh now? After all, the threat that Navots gave him was too strong. But he wasn't in a good state either. His face was covered in blood. Blood seeped out of his mouth, nose, and ears. His head felt like it was splitting. It was extremely painful. At this moment, Okula Singh, Barbara Rush, and Domingo suddenly appeared. Mr. Warren, are you okay? Okula looked at his sister on the ground with a complicated look in his eyes. Go kill her. The moment Warren said that, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Take Mr. Warren away from here, Okula Singh said. Barbara Rush and Dominguez looked at each other, knowing what Okula Hingis was up to. After all, they were sisters. It was reasonable that Okula couldn't bear to kill them. Moreover, in order to hold Warren back, Okula had been attacking her sister on her own initiative. She was worried that if Warren fought personally, it would endanger her sister's life. Mr. Warren, you're heavily injured. We'll take you away from here first, Barbara said. To be honest, they all knew how terrifying Warren's strength was. They thought that if Warren fought, Navat Singh would have no chance of winning. In the end, Warren actually won by a huge margin. He didn't even win by fighting head-on. The way he won was very clever. Chapter 1791. Hey, Stephen, do you have time to call me today? Chen Zhao had been wandering around for the past few days. He was very free. However, he knew how many places Stephen had gone to for the movie. Last time, Stephen had even gone to Chen Zhao's house and stayed for one night. Then, Rasfa took him away. As far as Chen Zhao knew, Stephen had brought the main cast and crew to at least 5 countries for publicity in the past week. Daly Moore was in a car accident. She's still unconscious. Huh? Which hospital? Chen Zhao asked. Chantilly Hospital. I'll go over now. Chen Zhao hurried to the hospital. He saw Stephen's 2 bodyguards and his personal assistant, Yu Wenhui. The 3 of them were old acquaintances. So, when Chen Zhao arrived, they didn't stop him. They let him into the ward directly. How's her condition? Chen Zhao saw Stephen sitting before the bed. Daly Moore was lying on the bed with gauze wrapped around her head. Take a look first. Seeing Stephen's serious expression, Chen Zhao immediately put down his toolbox. After a quick check, he stood up and almost slapped Stephen's face. Fuck, Daly Moore's just asleep. I just wanted you to see if she has any internal injuries, like a concussion or cerebral hemorrhage. Stephen looked at Chen Zhao awkwardly. Then please make it clear. Chen Zhao looked at Stephen with a dark expression. But the police said that there's something strange about the accident. What's strange? It's like Daly Moore's car hit an electric pole, but there's no pole nearby, Stephen said. Stephen said, the friend who was with Dahlia was found outside the car. From the traces at the scene, it looks like she crashed through the windshield. Huh? You're talking about Nart Singer. Do you know her? Yes. She hangs out with Daly Moore and she's not a normal person. How is she now? Chen Zhao asked. Unconscious. The doctor said that she looks like she just finished a triathlon. Her body is almost half paralyzed. She's in this hospital too, right? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, I arranged a ward next door for her. I'll go next door. Is Daly Moore really alright? If you want anything to happen to her, I'll do it for you. Scram, hurry up and scram. When Chen Zhao went out, Halifa Oliver and Sannel happened to come in. Halifa and Chen Zhao nodded. Chen Zhao went to Navat Singer's room next door and saw a woman walk out. This woman was Okula Singh. Okula looked at Chen Zhao suspiciously. Who are you? Chen Zhao looked Okula up and down. Who are you? Just then, Fo walked over from afar. Chen, do you have any patients in the hospital today? For had a headache over this bastard who always came to the hospital to steal patients. In fact, Chen Zhao's actions were already half public in the hospital. Apart from the new employees, the doctors who had worked in the hospital for more than half a year basically knew that Chen Zhao was an illegal doctor. However, whether it was the major shareholder of the academy or the dean, they all turned a blind eye to this. Most of the time, he didn't hide it anymore. Singer glanced at Chen Zhao. So he was a doctor. After thinking it through, Ocula turned around and left. Chen, can't you control yourself? It seems like you guys can't do anything to the patients I've met. I don't think this will affect your performance. After chatting with Four for a bit, Chen Zhao entered Navot's Singer's room. After inspecting Navot's body, Chen Zhao realized that there was nothing wrong with her. After thinking about it, he realized that she had used her non-elemental body. In other words, it was mighty spirit transformation. However, Chen Zhao had used mighty divinization before, so he knew very well how high the requirements were for physical fitness. It was like pouring pure oxygen into an oxygen cylinder. This was because of the metal walls of the oxygen cylinder. However, if compressed oxygen was poured into a balloon, the balloon would explode instantly. Nevertheless, Navots didn't use it too much. It seemed that she was rather restrained and didn't use it too much. The mighty spirit transformation did put a lot of pressure on her body. But it didn't hurt her foundation. Actually, Navots was like an athlete who had overdone her exercise. Her muscles were too tired, so she wasn't really injured. However, Chen Zhao also noticed the damage on Navot's left ear. Chen Zhao wasn't sure what had caused the damage. Chen Zhao sent a bit of celestial power to Navot Singh. It could save her half a month of rest. Knock, knock. At some point, Stephen was standing at the door. Dahlia's awake. Oh, okay, I'll go. Is she okay? She's fine. Chen Zhao shook his head. Chen Zhao followed Stephen back to Dahlia's room. Halifa, Oliver and Sannel stood before Dahlia's bed. Dahlia was already awake and sitting on the bed. Chen, you're here. Sannel remembered that her mother and Chen Zhao had been at loggerheads before. Later, her grandfather had been the middleman and Chen Zhao had reconciled with her mother. However, she really didn't know that Chen Zhao and her mother had such a good relationship. Oliver, Sannel, you two go out first, Stephen said. Chen, give Dahlia a checkup. Halifa was instantly unhappy. She looked at Stephen coldly. Why don't you go out? You can be here, but I can't. I'll go out too, okay? Stephen said angrily. After the three left, Chen Zhao sat on a nearby chair. Tell me, what happened? I'm a bit confused about the details. Dahlia told him what had happened after lunch yesterday. First, Navot's sister had brought people to attack her. Then, there was the car accident. As for the accident, Daily Moore remembered it clearly. However, after the airbag popped out, Dahlia was in a daze. Chen Zhao heard more clearly. The two groups of people who attacked Navots were probably from the same group. They were all after Navot's earring. Judging from this, the earring should be a magic item passed down by Navot's family. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1792. Chen Zhao looked at Delamore. After a long silence, he asked, do you need me to do something? Wait until Knots wakes up. I'll listen to her. On the day little Larissa was born, Delamore and Knot Singh came to help Chen Zhao. Whether they were effective or not, Chen Zhao would remember this favor. Daily Moore, on the other hand, was much calmer. She could tell that Knot Singh could get rid of her troublemaking sister many times. But she had never really done it. This meant that she still had feelings for her sister. So, Delamore didn't want to make the decision for her. After Not Sing woke up, she would support her no matter what decision she made. In the end, Chen Zhao was an outsider. The favor was there, so he didn't mind being a knife for someone. After Chen Zhao left the ward, he said a few words to Stephen, Halifa Oliver, and Sanger. Halifa watched as Chen Zhao and Stephen exchanged glances. Even a blind person could tell that they had something on their minds. Chen Zhao and Stephen were birds of a feather, but Chen Zhao didn't have much of a relationship with her. Even if she asked, Chen Zhao probably wouldn't tell her. However, Halifa couldn't understand why she was clearly closer to Delamore than Stephen. What could Chen Zhao and Stephen know that Delamore couldn't let her know? Halifa's heart ached and she was furious. But she wouldn't show it. Plus, if she asked now, there was no guarantee that Stephen would mock him. "Stephen, I'll leave Delamore to you," Halifa said. "I have something to do at the company. I'll leave now." After that, Halifa left with Sanger. Stephen finally asked, "Chen, what did you and Delamore talk about? Did she get into some kind of trouble? You have to help her." Stephen's mind was filled with all sorts of movie plots, like how a secret organization wanted to kill Delamore. That was why filmmakers were so jumpy. Nothing big, just a few blind people. "Delamore doesn't want me to interfere, which means she can handle it," Chen Zhao said casually. He didn't say everything so that Stephen wouldn't worry too much. "Really? Really? Stop nagging. If something really happened, would I just stand by and watch?" Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Let's go. Let's go take a look at the piece of land I recently acquired." Stephen was in a good mood. "Your daughter is still in the hospital. Are you sure you can come down peacefully? You've already checked that she's fine. What's there for me to worry about? Besides, if something really happens to Dahlia, I'll rob Mirror Lake. You owe me. Is your daughter only worth a piece of land?" Yu Wenhui stayed behind to take care of Dahlia. The two bodyguards followed beside Stephen. Chen Zhao and Stephen sat in the back seat. "Old thing, I'm with you, but you still want two bodyguards to follow me. You don't trust me." The two bodyguards sitting in front were rolling their eyes. One of the two bodyguards was Famutus. She was one of the people who knew Chen Zhao's true colors. The other bodyguard came after Famutus. But he also knew that Chen Zhao and Stephen were so close that they were almost in the same boat. And Chen Zhao always liked to play such nasty jokes. "If I don't trust you, I'll tell them to kill you." Stephen glared at Chen Zhao. "By the way, Famutus, how's Evan?" "Not bad. He's gotten fatter." Famutus's income was stable now. He wasn't like before, when he could only feed Evan dog food. Stephen still paid Famutus a high salary. After 40 minutes of driving, they finally stopped. But it wasn't because they'd reached the ground. The road behind them was too hard to drive on. They could only get out and walk. The road behind them was a dirt road. Although it had been built, it hadn't been repaired for a long time. However, the environment here was indisputable. It was even better than the original Mirror Lake. They were at the top of the mountain. Looking into the distance, it was full of greenery. When the four reached the top, they were already drenched in sweat. However, a gemstone-like lake came into view. Chen Zhao gasped and turned to look at Stephen. Stephen was really awesome to be able to find a place like this. Not to mention the feng shui, the spiritual qi here was much more abundant than other places. "How is it?" "It's not bad, right?" Stephen asked, rather proud. "Not bad, really not bad," Chen Zhao said sincerely. This place was really a blessed land. In ancient times, it would be a blessed land. To be able to find such a blessed land in modern society was truly a rare sight. How come no one owns such a good place? Chen Zhao asked, confused. Even a blind person could see that it was a good place. But why wasn't anyone occupying such a good place? Chen Zhao was really confused. There were many rich people in LA. It couldn't be that everyone didn't want this place, right? Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Stephen suddenly had a toothache. Seeing Stephen's expression, Chen Zhao felt that there might be some flaws that he hadn't noticed. Mr. Stephen, move back. There's a crocodile. Another bodyguard immediately stood in front of Stephen. Chen Zhao saw it too. It was a 2-meter-long crocodile. There were crocodiles here. No wonder. But this place was about 100 meters above sea level. Chen Zhao didn't expect a crocodile to live here. Is this running water? Chen Zhao asked. Yes, it's an underground fountain. Stephen nodded. Everything here is good, but there are crocodiles. I found an expert to estimate that there are hundreds of crocodiles here. It's very troublesome. Since Stephen wanted to build a house here, it was obviously for living. But if there were crocodiles here, it would be a threat to the residents. It was impossible to clear hundreds of crocodiles. If one or two were missed, it would be a threat to Stephen and his family's safety. This was also why Stephen hadn't started building the land even though he'd bought it for so long. Didn't you know there were crocodiles here when you bought it? I did. Then why did you buy it? I still have you. That's too much. You're treating me like a laborer, Chen Zhao complained. But this land wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. If there was a pond full of crocodiles, it meant that the fish here could support so many crocodiles. Just then, the crocodile that had been sunbathing by the shore suddenly crawled toward the fore. Oh, speaking of which, I haven't eaten crocodile meat yet. Let's eat crocodiles for lunch. Chapter 1793. Stephen and Famdis both knew what Chen Zhao was capable of. However, the other bodyguard, Frank, didn't know. He hadn't seen Chen Zhao fight anyone. When Chen Zhao casually walked up to the crocodile, Frank was shocked. He aimed his gun at the crocodile. But Chen Zhao only grabbed the 2-meter-long crocodile and lifted it up. It wasn't very big, but it was at least 100 kilograms. Chen Zhao actually lifted it up with one hand. Frank's jaw almost dropped. As for Stephen and Famdis, when they'd been chased by the demonized libel, they'd already seen Chen Zhao's power. Thus, a crocodile couldn't make them feel anything. Chen, this crocodile isn't enough for you, Stephen said. Skin it and roast it. There won't be much meat left. I'll go down and get a bigger one, Chen Zhao said. With that, Chen Zhao took off his clothes, leaving only his boxers, and jumped into the water. Frank's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Chen Zhao was asking to die. But Stephen and Famdis didn't care at all. After half a tank, Frank saw the water in front of him start to churn. Frank's heart tightened. Did Chen Zhao encounter crocodiles in the water? These were all crocodiles, real killer crocodiles. The largest could be 7 or 8 meters long and weigh close to 2 tons. They could dominate both freshwater and seawater. When they were hungry, they would even eat their own kind. In the animal world, they were definitely crazy. If humans encountered adult crocodiles in the water, they definitely couldn't win. Even on land, without firearms, they couldn't fight against these man-eating monsters. During World War II in the last century, there was a glorious story of a crocodile destroying a modern army of thousands. Putting aside the animals with infectious diseases, this was the most glorious war waged by wild animals against humans. There was no one else like it. In Frank's opinion, if Chen Zhao really encountered an adult crocodile in the water, he probably wouldn't be able to come up again. Whoosh! Suddenly, Chen Zhao stood up in the shallow water. Frank was shocked, but seeing that Chen Zhao was unharmed, he relaxed a little. Just then, Frank saw Sleep tossing and turning behind Chen Zhao. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Chen Zhao was holding a crocodile's upper jaw with one hand. Frank swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That crocodile was at least 6 meters long. This was definitely an overlord among the Gulf crocodiles. It was obvious that the crocodile was very powerful from the force it slapped the water with. But was it really okay for Chen Zhao to just grab its upper jaw like that? The strange thing was that the saltwater crocodile couldn't close its jaws even though its lower jaw wasn't bound. Frank was shocked. He couldn't understand how Chen Zhao had caught the crocodile with his bare hands. However, Chen Zhao seemed to be very familiar with the place, while Famutus and Stephen seemed to be very relaxed. They probably already knew what Chen Zhao was capable of. "Don't come over. Let's kill it first," Stephen shouted, jumping away immediately. He wasn't as capable as Chen Zhao. If Chen Zhao didn't hold on tight, the monster could send him to hell with a single bite. Chen Zhao grabbed the crocodile's upper jaw and twisted it. With a crack, the saltwater crocodile's tibia was instantly broken. However, it wasn't completely dead. Its body was still wriggling. Stephen only calmed down after the crocodile's stomach was cut open. "I told you to get a big one, but your head is too big. We'll get rid of them sooner or later anyway. Isn't that what you want?" Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. He and Frank were in charge of starting a fire. He couldn't catch crocodiles in the water, but he could still start a fire. Famutus was in charge of cutting open the crocodile's stomachs. Chen Zhao and Stephen sat on a rock by the lake. With Chen Zhao, Stephen wasn't afraid that a crocodile would suddenly jump out and swallow him. "Chen, do you really have a way to kill all the crocodiles here?" "It's not troublesome," Chen Zhao said. "Abitos and Raymond can do it. Bring them here and they'll probably kill most of the crocodiles here in a dozen days." "Raymond? Oh, that big snake, right? I don't think I saw him last time. Why did you hide him?" "I didn't hide him. It's just that his body has grown a bit too much recently. I didn't want to scare you. Last time I saw Raymond, he was 5 or 6 meters long. You said he's grown a bit too much. How much can he grow?" Stephen remembered that the last time he saw Raymond, little Larissa wasn't even born yet. Raymond was long, but in his impression, Raymond had always been the skinny type. Compared to the python, he was at least half the size. "He's 12 meters now," Chen Zhao said. Stephen sucked in a breath of cold air. 12 meters. He could probably break the world record. "I'm going to Moon Villa today. I want to see Raymond." Stephen was interested. "Your daughter is still in the hospital. Don't bring that up. Dahlia's fine." Soon, the aroma of meat wafted from the barbecue stall. Famutus and Frank didn't understand why Chen Zhao would carry so many spices with him. Chili powder, cumin, salt and pepper. Chen Zhao and Stephen started eating as soon as they arrived. Famutus and Frank didn't treat themselves as outsiders now. It was more fun to eat and drink together. Unfortunately, there was no alcohol. However, crocodile meat was really disgusting and had a fishy smell. Without alcohol, eating too much would be boring. Even Chen Zhao couldn't eat much. Such a big crocodile was wasted just like that. As for the small one, he didn't even roast it. Instead, he tossed it into the water. In the end, he just buried the rest of the big one. "Stephen, what do you think about building your new home in the middle of the lake?" "Hey, that's a good idea. Why don't you build it in the middle of the lake?" Mirror Lake is so much bigger than your lake. If we build it in the middle, it'll be too troublesome to go back and forth. They stayed at the top of the mountain for half a day. It wasn't until 3 in the afternoon that they went down. Stephen gave Yuanhui a call and asked about Delamore's situation. After making sure that everything was fine, he followed Chen Zhao to Moon Villa. Today, Portia stayed at Moon Villa to take care of little Jerlin and Larissa. Portia saw that Chen Zhao had left her, Jerlin, and Larissa at home. Portia thought that she would have a chance to uncover the mystery of Moon Villa's chef. In the end, she waited in the kitchen until noon, but no one came to cook. She was very disappointed. In the end, she could only cook herself. When she saw Stephen, she immediately started fawning over him again. She wasn't even this friendly to Chen Zhao, who paid her salary. Chapter 1794. Stephen was also shocked when he saw Raymond. Luckily, Raymond was still Raymond. Even though he had changed, he was still Raymond. After the initial shock, Stephen quickly calmed down. He observed Raymond with interest. This was not the first time Stephen had seen Raymond. Stephen had come into contact with Raymond when he was just a little snake. Stephen knew how intelligent Raymond was. Famtis and Frank, on the other hand, were frightened. They were afraid that the snake would swallow Stephen. What was a 12-meter snake? In this era, there were almost no snakes over 10 meters. It was not that there were none, but it was hard to find. Unless one ran to the deepest part of a tropical rainforest, they would not be found. Pythons and snakes were two different species. Raymond was a snake, not a python. But Raymond had the agility of a snake and the huge body of a python. The combination of the two was the scariest. If it was just a python, in an open area, no matter how big it was, it would not be a threat to a rational person. Because the python's mobility was too poor, the water was their main battlefield. Snakes were fast, but they were too small. A wooden stick could teach a snake how to sit. Raymond also had a characteristic that snakes and pythons did not have. He could chew. He ate by chewing like a mammal. So, he did not need to strangle his prey like a python, nor did he need to rely on poison like a poisonous snake. Raymond had all the advantages of snakes and pythons, and even abilities that they did not have. Not far. The people from the Holy Fire sect were not far. He would meet them in at most a day. Dylan thought to himself. The journey these few days was getting more and more difficult. This was not a tropical rainforest. But the journey was also difficult. It had been raining for days, not stopping for a moment. Norway was in northern Europe, so it was cold and humid all year round. This was where the equipment of the supernatural organization came into play. Even Dylan had to admit that they were well prepared. Waterproof clothing and tents played a great role in this environment. They could even find a way to get some cooked food. But Dylan looked down on them more and more. These guys did not seem to have any other skills besides bragging. Every time they went hunting, it was Klaus and the others. It seemed that in this team, the ones with the strongest combat power were the ordinary people like Klaus. Suddenly, a person appeared in front of the group, swaying in their direction. The team immediately stopped, and everyone raised their guard as they looked at that person. The man walked a few steps and suddenly sat on the ground. He stood up with difficulty, but he couldn't walk to the front of the team. After 2 or 3 steps, he fell to the ground. More Raz went up to check on the man. A moment later, he turned back and shook his head at everyone. Dead. Gaia turned the body over and found that half of the body had been hit by some kind of magic. It's necromancy, Hela said. At this time, Doring walked over and said, I remember that there is a canyon of death in this forest. However, it's not that big of a deal. There are often teams going in and out of the Canyon of Death. Why do you want to enter Death Canyon? What's the point of going to such a dangerous place? Death canyons could be found all over the world. Most of the time, because of the geographical environment, animals or humans would die in the valley, and the deathly aura would not be able to leave. Over time, death energy filled the air, and the dead could not rest in peace. In the end, they turned into undead and wandered around the valley, eventually forming the Canyon of Death. Doring had never been to the Canyon of Death, but he had heard of it. At least 20% of spiritualists in Norway had entered the Canyon of Death. There is a magic material called the dying flower growing in the Canyon of Death, Doring said. If we can find it, it can be sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Also, the Canyon of Death isn't dangerous, so many spiritualists go in and out. Although he had plotted against the supernatural organization, he didn't lie about this. He didn't need to lie. Anyway, the people from the Holy Fire sect would come soon. Helis looked at the man's injury and said, "The necromancy spell that killed him is very powerful. Let's go and take a look. We haven't found any traces of the giant these days." They were doubtful about whether they could successfully find the giant. Logically speaking, the giant was as big as a hill. When it moved, it might not be earth-shattering, but it should at least leave some obvious traces. It shouldn't be completely untraceable. But the truth was that they couldn't find any traces of the giant at all. However, they had been in the forest for 6 or 7 days, and they hadn't fought at all. This made everyone a little angry. Other than the withered tree ghost territory they had encountered a few days ago, 4 people had moved around a little. The others were just here for sightseeing. But of course, they couldn't vent their bad moods. So after thinking, West said, "Let's go take a look at the Canyon of Death. If they could encounter some battles, it could ease everyone's agitated emotions." Gaia nodded. Okay. Doring looked down on these people even more. They only wanted to go to a place like the Canyon of Death that wasn't dangerous. He really didn't understand where these Americans got the courage to find the legendary giant. Even if they found it, could they really defeat the giant? Or did they have the courage to fight the giant? But he was kind enough to show them the way. After all, these Americans didn't lack money. If they had a good time in Death Canyon, he could also find a few dying flowers along the way. Doring directly used the guide spirit and found the direction of the Canyon of Death. Finding such a fixed location was very easy. It wasn't difficult at all. After walking for a while, they found another corpse. It had the same injury as the previous one. It seemed like the Canyon of Death wasn't far away. These should be spiritualists from Western Europe. This symbol seems to be a disciple of the Mountain Sect. The Mountain Sect was very famous in the United Kingdom. West recognized them mainly from the Mountain Sect insignia they wore. The Mountain Sect was a minority religion, but they acted more like an ordinary supernatural force. They didn't develop followers and believers. They just fought for territory all day and developed the businesses and companies under the Mountain Sect. The most unbelievable thing was that the Mountain Sect was a shareholding company. It was divided into major and minor shareholders. It had to be said that this religion, which was completely modeled after a listed company, was a brand new model. Of course, they weren't a cult, so they were developing quite well. It was said that they had many cooperation projects with the government. They had branches all over Europe. Chapter 1795. At the other end of the forest, a team was also passing through the forest toward the supernatural organization's team. Everyone in this team wore the same red and black clothes, but there was a red flame printed on the back. They were naturally from the Sacred Fire sect. There were more than 50 of them. They couldn't say that all of them were masters, but at least a dozen of them were quite famous in Northern Europe. Especially the person in charge of the division, Magri Modric. He was known as a tyrant in Northern Europe. Among the many people in charge of the division, his name was also very famous. Most of Magri Modric's subordinates were elites. To put it bluntly, most of them had some ability and were extremely daring. They used their own methods to do many evil things and were wanted by the government or the spiritual world. In the end, they could only hide in the Sacred Fire sect to avoid trouble. These people all had one thing in common. They ignored the rules of the world. In this regard, they were very much like Magneto from the X-Men. They thought they were better than others and didn't treat ordinary people as humans. Of course, in reality, neither the government nor the spiritual world would allow such people to be too active. The Norwegian Sacred Flame sect was considered one of the more powerful sects in Europe. Although the Nordic spiritual world was more active, the Norwegian government wasn't powerful. So, it gave the Sacred Fire sect a chance to develop. At this moment, a corpse appeared in front of them. "Guardian, look at this corpse." Lev, Magri Modric's second-in-command, shouted. As the head of the Norwegian branch, Magri Modric's position in the church was that of a protector. Magri took a few steps forward and looked at the corpse. Frowning, he said, "Necromancy. Guardian, don't you think this corpse looks familiar?" "You know him?" Magri Modric asked. "No, I'm talking about the magic on this corpse." Magri Modric thought for a moment and suddenly remembered. He immediately exclaimed, "Isn't this the madman Ribrick?" "Yes, this is Ribrick's magic." Speaking of Ribrick, Magri Modric felt a headache and helplessness. Ribrick had once been a member of the Sacred Fire sect. In essence, he was no different from the other Sacred Fire sect members. If there was any difference between them, Ribrick was even crazier. To be precise, he was a complete lunatic. The other members of the Sacred Flame sect knew when to put on airs. Although they had all killed and robbed before. However, he would not disregard the wine and start a massacre. But Ribrick didn't care. The things he wanted, the women he wanted, he would just take them by force. Furthermore, his methods were extremely cruel, leaving no survivors. This also caused the entire Northern Europe region to be agitated. The government flew into a rage and issued a must-kill order to the spirit world. This was one of the few times in recent times that the government had issued an order to the supernatural world. Even the Sacred Flame sect could not withstand this pressure. In the end, they could only hand Ribrick over to the alliance of several supernatural organizations. However, Ribrick had relied on his powerful strength to do so. After killing dozens of spiritualists, he swaggered off. Over the next few years, news of Librick's bloody massacre spread from time to time. However, Ribrick no longer had anything to do with the Sacred Flame sect. Therefore, they did not care about what Ribrick did. No one wanted to run into a lunatic like Ribrick. Not even the Sacred Flame sect. This guy was a complete lunatic who did not know how to control himself. Furthermore, he also had a type of necromancy that he had created himself, which struck fear into the hearts of the entire spiritual world. This is Ribrick's famous magic, dead cells. Lev asked. Just now, Magri Modric had only felt the aura of death on the corpse. Only now could he be completely sure that the magic left on the corpse was dead cells. "I hope we don't run into that lunatic here," Magri Modric said. Even though there were more than 50 of them, Magri Modric was not confident that they could defeat Ribrick. Even if they could win, it would probably be a Pyrrhic victory. "Guardian, there are so many of us. Do we still need to fear Ribrick? Since you know about the dead cells, do you know how terrifying this magic is?" Magri Modric asked. It is said that this dead cells was created by the lunatic Ribrick. If you come into contact with the dead cells, it will erode your magic. Once your magic is exhausted, you will die, Lev said. Actually, if it is just to guard against the dead cells, most of our team can do it. As long as there is a defensive magic, the dead cells cannot get close to you, Magri Modrich said. Then what is so terrifying about this magic? Actually, the most terrifying thing is that Ribrick can recycle the dead cells that have absorbed magic power and then turn them into his magic power source. In the past 20 years or so, he has killed hundreds of spiritualists. Almost every spiritualist died under the dead cells, and the magic power of every dead person became his magic power source. It's like he carries hundreds of magic power batteries with him. He has almost inexhaustible magic power. When Lev heard Magri Modrich's words, his face instantly became extremely frightened. A terrifying enemy with nearly limitless magic power. How could they deal with such an enemy? Guardian, doesn't that mean he is invincible? Of course he's not invincible. There are still people in this world who can crush him. For example, the 23rd generation Blood Mary of the Scarlet Church. 12 years ago, the 23rd generation Blood Mary personally went out to kill Ribrick. With the 23rd generation Blood Mary's help, do you think Ribrick can escape? Of course he couldn't escape. The 23rd Blood Mary is a powerful being. She subdued Ribrick in one move, but then she let Ribrick go. Of course he couldn't escape. Why is that? Because Ribrick and the 23rd generation Blood Mary were in the downtown area. Ribrick threatened the 23rd generation Blood Mary that if she didn't let him go, he would self-destruct. If someone else self-destructed, the 23rd generation Blood Mary wouldn't care. But Ribrick's self-destruction could cause heavy casualties in the downtown area, so the 23rd generation Blood Mary could only let him go. What about the 23rd generation Blood Mary? I don't know about the others. As far as I know, no one can fight Ribrick head-on, Magri Modrich said. That's why I don't want to meet Ribrick. Even if we can win, I'm afraid we will suffer heavy casualties. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1796. Half a day passed. The people from the supernatural organization arrived at Death Canyon before the sky turned dark. Along the way, they found many corpses. Some had clearly been dead for a long time. Some only had piles of white bones left. Who knew how long they had been dead? Moreover, it could be seen that many of the corpses had died in the same way. This is Death Canyon, Dylan said. Let's go in before it gets dark. It'll be more troublesome at night than during the day. The undead are active at night. Just then, Helly spoke up and stopped everyone in their tracks. Don't go in, Hela said. There's a powerful guy inside. I'll go in. Dylan scoffed at Hela's words. Many people went in and out of Death Canyon. He hadn't heard of any powerful guy either. What was the point of this girl making such a fuss? However, judging from the others' expressions, they seemed to believe her. Helis, is the guy inside very powerful? Yes, very powerful, Helis said. You guys won't be able to handle him. Death magic is too strange. There are so many of us, so Gaia should be able to beat him. I'm 80% confident. Norma and him are 50-50, and so is an elite. The others probably can't beat him. He's that powerful. West asked in surprise. He didn't doubt Helis' guess. You're going to fight him alone? Yes. Since he's a necromancer, of course I have to fight him personally. Plus, he's quite famous among necromancers. Okay, West said. But you have to tell us if there's trouble. Send us a signal. Actually, He had the same personality as Qin Zhao. He was very protective. He didn't have any intention of fighting one-on-one either. In fact, in the spiritual world, one-on-one fights were never recommended. Most of the time, spells could restrain each other to a certain extent. Unless they were powerful to a certain extent, it was obvious that they would be restrained in a small area. Therefore, one-on-one fights didn't mean who was stronger. Gaia went up and patted Helis' shoulder. "Don't make me go in and clean up the mess." Actually, everyone knew that Helis was a very competitive person. Their slogan in the association every day was to become someone who could fight alongside Qin Zhao. Even if this slogan seemed unrealistic. Because they all knew how powerful Qin Zhao was. But Helios was never discouraged by this. Once Gaia said that, Helith would definitely not send out a distress signal. But at the same time, she would also face this battle with absolute caution. He would not underestimate his opponent just because he was 80% confident. Yes, I know. Harold was also clear-minded and naturally knew that Gaia was trying to goad her. After that, he walked into the Death Valley alone. His figure gradually disappeared in the hazy rain. "We'll rest here for the night," West said. Dylan was sick and tired of this. These Americans. He really didn't understand what they were doing here. A mere Death Canyon was enough to make them feel as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Now, he had to spend the night in this completely uncovered place. Once they left the tent, they were all wet. Thinking of this, Dylan felt irritated. However, his words carried little weight in the team. No one would listen to him. After setting up the tent, Derlin went inside. He didn't greet the others either. He took out his phone and sent a message. "Where are you?" But he was very careful. After sending the message, he deleted it. Very soon, the other side replied. After receiving the message, Derlin was extremely happy. Because the Sacred Fire sect wasn't far from them. That Derlin has been secretly sending messages a few times recently, Klaus said to Gaia. Morid planted a true vision seed in him. He already knows everything about him. "A group of people is approaching us," Gaia said. Gaia said, "Our people have been feeling down for the past few days. We need a big battle to lift everyone's spirits." Actually, a few people in the team already knew about this. West definitely knew, but he only wanted to let a few people know. They treated it as an accidental attack. This way, they could better lift everyone's spirits. Of course, the prerequisite was that no one was hurt. Derlin thought that he was being careful and cautious, but how could he hide it from some people? Just then, there was another loud rumble in the sky. This was the second thunder near the withered tree demon's territory a few days ago. Then, a huge body appeared. And this body was right above their heads. Gaia and Klaus were outside the tent and naturally saw this huge body. It was the feet of the giant, and the giant was stepping towards their camp. "Oh no!" Gaia and Klaus both exclaimed. But the giant's foot did not land. It was like it was stepping through the air, leaving no footprints on the ground. As the thunder disappeared, the giant's figure also disappeared. "That's not a giant, more like some kind of image," Gaia said doubtfully. "If that's the case, then does the giant we've been searching for really exist?" Klaus was also a little hesitant. The Scarlet Mission stated that the giant wreaked havoc in the forest, so it attracted the attention of the Scarlet Church. That means the giant exists. But if it's such a huge giant, the destruction it would cause would be huge. It might even destroy a small city. Even if it's not near a densely populated area, it would at least cause great damage. "It's not as simple as attacking a few humans," Gaia said. "You mean the giant we saw isn't the one attacking humans?" "I don't think so. If it was in a densely populated area, it wouldn't be able to hide it. If it was in the wilderness, I'm afraid there wouldn't be anyone left alive. If the giant stepped over, I'm afraid everyone would die. So either the quest itself is a lie, or the giant we saw wasn't the real giant. Just then, Morid came out of the tent and walked towards Gaia. Gaia, someone stepped on the seeds I left on the road. Someone is approaching us. How many are there? Gaia asked. About 40 to 50 people. I can't calculate the exact number, Morid said. The seeds he left were like a sensor device that could roughly determine the distance and number of people. But it couldn't be absolutely accurate. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1797. Pa! A crisp sound came from under Modric's feet. Modric stopped and bent down to pick up a seed on the ground. Is this a long-distance message? Modric recognized the seed. Looks like we've been discovered. It's okay, just a bunch of unruly people, Modric said nonchalantly. Sometimes, power could decide everything. If it was in a society, he might be able to turn the situation around with his wits and wits. But this was a forest. All wits and wits would be crushed by absolute power. Magri Modric had enough confidence in the Sacred Flame sect. This group of people was 80% of the Sacred Flame Order's Norwegian branch's combat power. He had brought almost all of the Norwegian division's combat power. Those who didn't come only made up 20% of the combat power. Most of them were peripheral members or even ordinary people. Mainly, he wanted to try and see if he could find the legendary giants. If they accidentally completed the Scarlet Mission, then even if they were members of the Sacred Flame sect, they could still go to the Scarlet Church to receive the reward. Magri Modric still had some ideas and ambitions. Of course, the first task was to get rid of the Americans. It was said that the Americans were quite rich. They could pay $200,000 for a guide. That was to say, if he could take them all down. Then millions or even tens of millions of dollars would not be a problem. For an organization like the Sacred Flame sect that had been attacked and suppressed by the government and others, money had always been a problem that they had to worry about. Of course, extortion and blackmail were not impossible. The key problem was the trouble that would follow. Once the bottom line was crossed, then they would be the enemy of the world. For example, Riblik. He was in a situation where he was the enemy of the world. The Sacred Flame sect was arrogant but not crazy. Kidnapping ordinary people was meaningless. Kidnapping rich people would have a huge impact. Once the government found out, then the government would retaliate with unparalleled ferocity. Although individuals in the spiritual world were stronger than ordinary people, but the government was still the government. In this era, the power of the government was above everything. So for the Sacred Flame sect, the Americans were the god of fortune who gave them money. Most importantly, there would be no follow-up trouble. So what if there was follow-up trouble? Could the power or organization behind them take revenge on the Sacred Flame sect? Not long after, the Sacred Flame sect's team appeared at the periphery of Death Canyon. In the heavy rain, they could see a few figures in front of them. Why weren't they prepared? Didn't you say there were more than 30 people? Could it be an ambush nearby? Lev asked. Ambush? Magri Modric sneered. This was not a real battlefield. In such a complicated environment, and with the limited number of people, it was impossible for them to survive. The so-called ambush was meaningless. Lev, teach them a lesson, Magri Modric said. Lev took 2 steps forward, not caring if he was exposed to the Americans. Raising his arms high, Ni Enong chanted an incantation. At this moment, the raindrops in the sky suddenly turned into sharp icicles. Hua hua hua, suddenly, tens of thousands of icicles fell from the sky. Then, the few people outside the tent covered their heads and scurried away. Then, the campsite instantly exploded. One by one, they came out of their tents with their heads bleeding. Wow, what's going on? What happened? The icicles were not fatal, but if they hit the head, they would definitely pierce through the skin. Dylan ran out too. When he saw the Sacred Flames sect, he could not help but be happy. When he looked at the battered and exhausted Americans, he felt even more carefree. A few days ago, they had been showing off in front of him. Now, it was time to see how they would die. Gaia, Morid, West, Klaus, and the others did not warn him immediately. They covered their heads and hid. Gaia, what happened? Who attacked us? Did those bastards attack us? Bastards, I'm going to kill them. Jolanash had a fiery temper. She had been holding it in for a few days and had nowhere to vent. Now, she was being attacked for no reason. Of all things, the icicle had scratched her cheek. For a woman, appearance was as important as life. Especially a woman with a bad temper. For a moment, the campsite was in chaos. All of them were cursing the attackers. By then, the people from the Sacred Flames sect had spread out and surrounded the people from the supernatural organization. You've been surrounded. Surrender now. Otherwise, we won't go easy on you. Magri Modrich shouted proudly. Suddenly, a fireball appeared above the campsite. It was a huge fireball with a diameter of more than 1 meter. Go to hell. Jolanash threw a super explosive bomb in Magri Modrich's direction. There was a hint of surprise in Magri Modrich's eyes. What a powerful elementalist. Magri Modrich himself was an elemental sorcerer and specialized in fire magic. Dylan was shocked too. Jolanash was actually so powerful. He was actually able to release such a powerful fire-type magic. Magri Modric also raised one hand and a super explosive bomb appeared above his head. Boom! The two super explosive bombs collided with each other, causing an earth-shattering explosion. Magri Modric looked at Jolanash, who had released the super explosive bomb. Then he looked at Jolanash's heaving chest. His lips curled. It seemed that releasing such a super explosive bomb was too strenuous for this girl. Jolanash's chest was indeed heaving, but it wasn't because she was tired. It was because of anger. Seems like you won't give up until you see the coffin. Magri Modric's gaze was indifferent. He raised his right hand again. An even bigger fireball with even more terrifying power formed. This wasn't an explosive bomb anymore. It was called a small sun. The rain couldn't get close to the small sun. The entire entrance to Death Valley was completely illuminated by the small sun. Now, tell me, do you surrender? Dylan immediately shouted, Magri Modric, it's me. I'm Dylan. He didn't want to be affected by these Americans. So, he immediately revealed his identity and joined the Sacred Flames sect's side. Then he could enjoy the rights of a victor. Jolanash wasn't shocked when she saw Magri Modric's magic. She was only happy. I like this magic. I want it, Jolanash said like a bandit. Chapter 1798. Klaus, Nami. Come behind me, Risa said. Risa didn't need to worry about the others, but the lightning squad couldn't resist this large-scale magic. Klaus and the others were ordinary people. They couldn't resist this kind of attack. The power of the little sun in front of them was probably equivalent to a tomahawk missile. Mr. Magri Modric, I think they seem to be looking down on you, Doring said. Doring said, when they looked at you, they did not show any respect or fear. You are a tyrant. Magri Modrich glanced at Doring, and then at the Americans. It seemed like, as Doring said, they were not afraid. Magri Modrich didn't like this kind of enemy. He liked to see his enemies terrified and at a loss. Magri Modrich's right arm, which was raised in the air, moved forward. The little sun shot towards the center of the camp. Boom, the huge flames seemed to be able to destroy everything. But the fire and impact seemed to be extinguished faster than expected. Maybe it was because of the rain. But Magri Modrich believed that the power of the little sun was enough to kill half of them. The other half would also lose the power to resist. But when the fire gradually disappeared, the group of Americans still stood in the same place. They didn't seem to be hurt. The figures in the camp were messy. Tall, short, men, women, all stood there unevenly. But in this chaos, there was an indescribable uniformity. Risa's petite body seemed to be panting, and her face was a bit irritable. She had absorbed too much heat. She needed to find a place to pour it out. Or a person. Just then, a big hand rested on Risa's shoulder. Risa, do you need to share some? Gaia asked. No, I like this kind of full load. I can still hold more, Risa said calmly. Magri Modrich was a bit surprised. Why didn't they die? There wasn't even anyone injured. Could it be that one of them had some kind of magic that could restrain his little son? Jolanash walked out of the camp alone and walked towards Magri Modrich. Sir, I think we can talk, Jolanash said, staring at Magri Modrich. Have you chosen to surrender? Magri Modrich was still arrogant as he looked down at Jolanash. No, give me this spell and I'll let you live, okay? Jolanash looked at Modrich sincerely. Ha! Little girl, do you know my name? I'm from the Holy Flames sect. I'm a tyrant. Magri Modrich said, do you know what I'm best at? Or do you think that by blocking one of my attacks, you will have the ability to fight against me? Tyrant. Touching her chin, Jolanash turned to West. Mr. West, will the chairman agree if I call myself tyrant? If you're called tyrant, then I'll be called queen. Lisa immediately joined the discussion. You can only call me princess, Moore said. No, I don't want to share a name with a bear, Risa said. Magri Modrich's face darkened. These Yanks didn't seem to care about him at all. They didn't even care about the Holy Flames sect. This wasn't good. Damn Yanks, you'll pay for your ignorance. Magri Modrich yelled. No one liked to be looked down upon or even ignored. Plus, Magri Modrich was a very hot-tempered person. Jolanash looked at Magri Modrich. Seems like you don't agree. But it doesn't matter. I'll make you speak anyway. Saying this, Jolanash pointed at Magri Modrich and made a shooting motion. Boog! A red light shot out from Jolanash's finger. Magri Modrich immediately cast a magic shield on himself, but the red light instantly shattered the shield and pierced through Magri Modrich's shoulder. Everyone was shocked. Magri Modrich was injured. He was actually injured. Death Ray. Magri Modrich was also proficient in fire magic. Of course, he knew this was Death Ray. It had extremely powerful penetrating power. Dellen's expression changed slightly. It seemed like these Yanks were stronger than he'd imagined. At least Jolanash's strength surprised Dellen. After all, the person beside him was the tyrant Magri Modrich. Not everyone could hurt him. Smiling, Jolanash looked at Magri Modrich. Magri Modrich was even more furious. Attack at will. Instantly, more than 50 Holy Flame sect disciples attacked the members of the supernatural organization. Just then, vines suddenly drilled out of the ground. These vines came very suddenly and instantly grabbed 7 or 8 Holy Flame sect disciples. The few disciples screamed in agony. The vines wrapped tighter and tighter around them, almost crushing their bones. Morid looked at West. "Mr. West, can I kill them?" "Of course, as you wish." West stood where he was and nodded slightly. Dylan was even more shocked. This young man called Morid was actually such a powerful nature plant spiritualist. At the same time, Lisa also attacked. She started to absorb heat and poured it on the Holy Flame sect disciples. Lisa slapped more than 10 times in the air, each with a powerful and high-temperature impact. The disciples who couldn't cast a magic shield in time were instantly torn to pieces. Even if they had a magic shield, it didn't mean they could withstand the impact. They just didn't end up as pitifully as their companions. On the other hand, Gakira and Dongye Tianchi loved this kind of chaotic battle the most. Most importantly, they could kill people. Dongye Tianchi, in particular, turned into a samurai the moment he unsheathed his katana. The weapon he was holding was Demon Blade White-Faced Ghost. When the blade was unsheathed, demonic aura filled the air. Dongye Tianchi turned into a wild and cruel monster. There was only slash in his mind. One slash at a time. Beside him, Genkira reminded him. "White-faced ghost, behave yourself. Otherwise, our boss will throw you into the lava." Instantly, Dongye Tianchi sobered up. White-faced ghost really wanted to kill Genkira too, but he didn't want to face Chen Zhao's anger. His current state didn't give him absolute freedom, but it was at least acceptable. "Damn, these people are hard to deal with. Retreat, retreat!" Magri Modrich yelled. Suddenly, from the direction of Death Valley, a cloud darker than the night shrouded the area. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1799. Gila strolled out. But she was still holding a head in her hand. Seeing Helis come out of the Death Valley, everyone made way for her. "Helis, in principle, we don't object to you killing people," West said. "But we can't tolerate the birth of a pervert. Throw this head away and we'll still be on the same side." "I'm not a pervert." Helis threw the head on the ground helplessly. "I just want what's in his head." "Fine. Next time you carry a head, can you find something to carry it with?" "I don't have anything to carry," Helis said. "My clothes are expensive. I don't want to use them to carry this disgusting head." "Go find something to carry it with you." "Oh, how long will it take to extract the thing from this head? Can you do it in Norway? Or do you need to bring it back?" "It'll take a long time." "Fine. Looks like I need to find a way to send this head back home." Helis looked at the scene. "Did I miss something?" Magri Modric saw the head. He recognized Riblik. Back then, he was the one who had tried his best to pull Riblik into the Holy Flame sect. Of course, in the end, he had personally handed Riblik over to the organization. So, he remembered it clearly, even though many years had passed. That crazy, perverted, terrifying madman filled with evil. He was an undefeatable madman. Modric remembered it very, very clearly. Riblik. But today, they had reunited, and in such a way. Riblik only had a head left. The face of the head was also filled with shock and astonishment. How could this be? Who was that black-clothed girl? How could she have killed Malik? How could a girl kill that terrifying madman? "Helis, don't fight with me," Jolanash said. "I want the man called Tyrant alive. West, get ready too. We need to send him back to the headquarters too." "Which one is Tyrant?" Helis asked curiously. Which one? Isn't he powerful? He has to be at least 1/10 as powerful as the president to have that name. That's him. Jolanash pointed at Magri Modric. But this nickname belongs to me now. He has a spell that I like. Magri Modric suddenly felt a chill. He met Hallie's gaze. He noticed that Hallie's was a little interested in him. After all, this girl had just killed Ribrick. Modric didn't think he could compete with Ribrick. He also didn't think that he could fight against the person who killed Ribrick. This was a true level suppression. All right, I won't do it. Harold shrugged. In fact, her magic power had not yet recovered. She had used the abyssal demon in the battle with Ribrick. It couldn't be said that he didn't have any fighting strength now. However, he was definitely not at his peak condition. The battle in the Death Canyon just now had satisfied her. Therefore, for the time being, she did not want to make a move. Moreover, these enemies were too weak compared to Ribrick. A few of their main forces did not make a move. 2/3 of the work had been done. Now, only 1/3 of the people were left. No one in the Sacred Flames sect, including Magri Modric, had expected this. These Americans were so strong. Run! Someone shouted. However, they could not escape from the man-eating beast. White-faced Ghost liked this kind of chasing fish and slashing game the most. Except for Gatella, who needed to supervise White-faced Ghost, everyone else stayed where they were. Jolanash looked at Magri Modric with a smile on her face. See, give me that spell and I'll let you go. Magri Modric's face was pale. But Dellen's face was even paler. Because he suddenly realized the mistake he had made. He had underestimated these Americans. These Americans had not really made a move along the way. But this did not mean they were not strong. Most importantly, he was a traitor. Traitors were more hated than enemies. For example, in Germany after World War II, ordinary soldiers would not be court-martialed. Because they were just manipulated pawns. Only those generals and leaders were court-martialed. And those traitors. Magri Modric's eyes flashed. He was looking for a chance to break out. The only thing he was glad about was that he was a fire elemental. He had not risked his life alone and had not gone deep into the enemy's line of defense. He had been standing on the periphery. So he was considering if he should turn and run now. Would he have the chance? Do you want to run? Jolanash was too experienced in battle. Looking at Magri Modric's eyes, Jolanash guessed his intentions. Magri Modric was secretly furious. Damn this little girl. Why was her intuition so sharp? Guardian, let's surrender. Lev was already desperate. Was this still the spiritualist from the Magic Desert? This was like a national football team suddenly running to the Champions League and then abusing a powerhouse team. Not winning, but losing 10 o'clock. This result was so absurd, so unacceptable. There are too few people, not enough to go around, Morad complained. In fact, he could handle most of the enemies alone. Magri Modric gritted his teeth and shouted, I demand a fair duel with you. If I win, I demand the corresponding rights. Everyone looked at Magri Modric. It was unknown whether they were surprised by Magri Modric's choice. Or surprised by his courage. In fact, Magri Modric was just putting his all on the line. He didn't think he could escape. He wasn't good at speed. If he wanted to rely on his own 2 feet to escape the forest and the strong people in front of him, that was completely impossible. That was why he came up with such a strange request. What if you lose? Jolanash asked. Then I accept being your captive. Fuck, you're a captive now, Jolanash scolded. She wasn't a lady. If she was a lady, she wouldn't have wanted to get the nickname Tyrant just because she thought it was imposing. If you lose, then hand over your magic, Jolanash said. How about that? Nothing much. Magri Modrich knew very well that magic was his life-saving card. If he handed it over, he would completely become a lamb on the chopping board. Chapter 1800. Jolanash, Harris said. Kill him without him saying anything. Just leave his head intact. Modrich was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. How could he forget about this woman? Since she could get the memory she wanted from Ribrick's head, she could definitely get the same memory from his head too. That's right. Jolanash remembered. She looked at Modrich with an even more unfriendly gaze. If that's the case, there's no need for this duel. Just kill him. Wait. I agree. If I lose, I'll give you the spell you want. What a joke. This was his last trump card, not a talisman to kill him. If his trump card became a talisman to kill him, what was the point? Even if he didn't want to use the spell. It wasn't as precious as his own life. All right, I'll reluctantly agree, Jolanash said. They can't interfere during our duel. Otherwise, you'll lose and you'll have to let me go. Okay. West didn't care. He knew what Modrich was thinking like the back of his hand. In this duel, Magri Modrich had the advantage from the start. Because Jolanash wouldn't kill him, she had to keep him alive to give the spell. But he could be heavy-handed. It would be best if he could force the others to attack. That way, he would win even if he didn't win. Then, the other party would have to keep their promise and let him go. Jolanash understood this too, but she didn't care either. Just like what Magri Modrich himself believed in. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and plots were laughable and foolish farces. The old members of the supernatural organization had completely different thoughts in the past and present. Back then, Jolanash was still the #1 fighter in the organization. Back then, she didn't need to think about who she could defeat. She only needed to think about one thing. That was to make it impossible for the other people in the organization to surpass her. Before Chen Zhao came, she'd maintained it very well. After Chen Zhao came, she and the other people in the organization finally understood something. They didn't need to defeat 1 or 2 people, but a group of people. The Tower of Trials gave them this opportunity. When each of them entered the Tower of Trials alone, they could not even last for a moment. Up until now, each and every one of them had relied on their own strength to pass through the first level, and someone had also passed through the second level. What they were best at was not one-on-one, but one-on-many. When a person could easily deal with multiple opponents at once, it would be extremely easy to deal with one-on-one. Moreover, when facing enemies, everyone instinctively used the number of monsters on the trial tower to calculate the enemy's strength. As for Magri Modrich's strength, everyone already had an idea in their hearts. He wasn't weak. With Magri Modrich's strength, as long as he was given a few chances, he would probably be able to pass the first level. According to the strength of the monsters on the second floor, it should be equivalent to the strength of 30 monsters. Everyone had a different evaluation in their hearts, but everyone's evaluation of Magri Modrich wasn't too far off from each other. Jolanash had just passed level 2 not long ago and was now struggling on level 3. The crowd made way for Magri Modrich and Jolanash. Doring and Lev wanted to run. However, Gaia placed her large hand on their shoulders. Where are you going? There's going to be a big show here. With bitter expressions, the two were pulled to the edge of the arena by Gaia. Magri Modrich glanced at the Americans around him. Then, his gaze fell on Jolanash. Are you ready? Can we start now? Magri Modrich asked. Anytime, Jolanash replied. Then let's start, West ordered. Magri Modrich immediately wanted to throw out Little Sun again. However, just then, Jolanash's 10 fingers shot out 10 red rays at the same time. Magri Modrich was dumbfounded. Fight my ass, how could he fight like this? Jolanash's death ray had pierced through Magri Modrich's shoulder, but it didn't cause much damage to him. However, it didn't cause too much damage to him. It wasn't even a serious injury, let alone a fatal one. Of course, this was because Jolanash didn't plan on killing him. If Jolanash really wanted to kill him, she could just shoot at another position. He would either be seriously injured or crippled. How could he fight one-on-one? So, Magri Modrich purposely cast 2 fire shields on himself. With the power of the death ray he had just experienced, he felt that 2 fire shields should be able to block Jolanash's killer death ray. However, Magri Modrich didn't expect that. Jolanash's killer weapon wasn't the death ray, but the 10-finger volley. Magri Modrich's 2 fire shields could block 1 death ray. But he wasn't naive enough to think that he could block Jolanash's volley at the same time. Jolanash's 10 fingers could probably turn him into a hornet's nest with just a sweep. I admit defeat. Magri Modrich was very decisive. Without any hesitation. If he could fight and had a chance, Magri Modrich definitely wouldn't admit defeat so easily. But it was precisely because he didn't have a chance that he didn't want to lose both in person and spirit. Being able to shoot the death ray with 10 fingers at the same time. This was enough to show how strong Jolanash's magic was. In addition, it was extremely fast and had great destructive power. So Magri Modrich didn't think he had a chance to fight back. If Jolanash wanted to kill him, he wouldn't even have a chance to fight back. Maybe the difference in power between them wasn't that big. But the magic they had decided the outcome of this duel. Magri Modrich also had instantaneous magic. But it wasn't powerful enough to hurt Jolanash. And Jolanash's death ray wasn't just fast, it also had shocking penetrative power. He believed that Jolanash wouldn't really kill him. But if they really fought and Jolanash missed and hit a vital spot, it would be very fatal. Rather than admit defeat after being trampled on, it was better to save his last bit of face. The magic is in my phone. I'll send it to you. Magri Modrich was very trustworthy. To put it bluntly, he just hoped that Jolanash would leave him a way out for this reason. Okay, leave the thing and you can go. Jolanash didn't want to make things difficult for him. After all, they didn't have a deep hatred, and she got what she needed. But this guy has to stay. Jolanash pointed at Dylan. Chapter 1801. Dylan was so scared that he peed his pants. Sure enough, they were going to settle the score. Dylan raised his head and looked at Gaia, who had her hand on his shoulder. His legs had already turned to jelly. Of course, Modrich wouldn't care about Dylan. He wasn't one of his people. And from their tone, they didn't seem to have any intention of making things difficult for Leviticus. He had no obligation to stand up for Dylan. Plus, he hated Dylan, who dragged him into the pit. Were these Americans really weaklings? Why the fuck did you find a bunch of weaklings like this in Europe? Forget about extortion, he had to save his life first. There was no need to talk about revenge or anything like that. He'd brought 80% of the Holy Fire sex combat power from the Norway branch. And they'd all died here. How could he talk about revenge now? He didn't have the ability to. Can you tell me who you are? Why? Do you want revenge? West smiled at Magri Modrich. Modrich shook his head and said calmly, I don't dare, but I want to get to know you. North America, Supernatural Organization. I hope we'll have a chance to work together in the future, Modrich said indifferently. Modrich wasn't saying it out of anger. He really had this thought. Of course, it was more likely that they wouldn't have any contact. There were so many organizations in the world. The Holy Fire sect was only popular in Europe. Unless the Supernatural Organization's tentacles extended to Europe and they had a huge conflict. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any contact with each other. Modric had never thought of sending people to North America to seek revenge from the Supernatural Organization. What a joke. The Supernatural Organization had already shown such great power. If he wanted revenge, what price would he have to pay? And if he couldn't take revenge and angered them, then the Supernatural Organization might come to him. Modric couldn't say that he didn't hate them. But he was more concerned about whether it was worth it or not. And whether it was possible. The answer was obvious. While there was hatred between them, Modric didn't want to make enemies. You're so powerful. Why haven't I heard of you in North America? Modric could clearly feel that there were still a few people in their team who hadn't made a move yet. Those people were the strongest in their team. When we feel the need, our names will be heard all over the world, West said confidently. Then, will you participate in the Battle of Holy Glory? What Battle of Holy Glory? West was stunned. Everyone else, including Dylan and Lev, revealed looks of astonishment. You don't know. That's impossible. You guys are definitely qualified. We really don't know. Can you tell us about the Battle of Holy Glory? This year's Battle of the Holy Glory will be held in Istanbul. Istanbul used to be known by several names, such as Constantinople. It was once the capital of New Rome and later the capital of the Ottoman Empire. Of course, Istanbul was well documented in history textbooks. There were even more that were not recorded in history textbooks. For example, his status in the spiritual world. The Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones is actually a martial arts competition jointly organized by the 3 religions and 9 nations to select the Holy Glorious Ones for the next 10 years. 3 religions and 9 nations. Taoism, Buddhism, JD religion. The 9 nations are Japan, Russia, Norway, England, Austria, Vatican City, Turkey, India, and Egypt. There are 10 Holy Glorious Ones each year. The 3 religions and 9 nations will give out spots to individuals or organizations. Then, they'll fight. The 10 winners will receive the glory of the Holy Glorious Ones. Magri Modric looked at everyone. This Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones can be said to be a secret. In fact, many organizations and individual spiritualists know about this event. Of course, it's called a secret because the majority of those who know about the Battle of the Holy Glorious Ones are the top organizations and forces, or the top lone wolves. Moreover, almost every time, only those organizations and individuals participate. Those organizations and individuals below the top have no way of knowing about this. Modric had thought that the Supernatural Organization would know about this. After all, they were so powerful. There was no reason they wouldn't know. But now, it seemed that they were a newly rising organization. It was normal that they didn't know. Plus, the 3 religions and 9 nations hadn't started giving out spots yet. Are there any benefits to getting the Holy Glorious Ones? Glory. Isn't that enough? The Supernatural Organization will become famous in the spiritual world because of this, Modric said. Glory? That's all. West lost interest at once. Hey, Chen Zhao, Zhang Tianyi said. There's an event in Istanbul next January. Does your Supernatural Organization want to participate? What event? Do I get paid? Chen Zhao was lying in the sun. The Spiritual Worlds event is actually a martial arts competition. Are you sure you want me to participate? I'm not asking you to participate. It's your supernatural organization. I remember that you have many strong subordinates. Zhang Tianyi didn't want someone who broke the balance to participate in that event. If Qin Zhao participated, it would only become a farce. They're all busy, Qin Zhao said. I'm busy too. Why don't you go and play? I'll pay for the flight and accommodation. Do I need your money? Qin Zhao said straightforwardly. Can't you give me some face? This is also a chance for the supernatural organization to become famous. I don't need it. The supernatural organization doesn't need it either. Qin Zhao was telling the truth. The supernatural organization wasn't famous now, but even so, they were still taken care of by the Anti-Terrorism Security Department. If he made a name for himself, then trouble would come one after another. If they were celebrities, the more famous, the better. Fame meant money. But in the spiritual world, fame often meant all kinds of trouble. For example, was Zhang Tianyi famous enough in the spiritual world? Right now, he was basically the top person in the world, the Tao Master, the uncrowned king, and so on. But when some countries or regions encountered trouble, they would think of him first. For example, why didn't the Japanese look for him for the Rock of Death incident? Why did they look for Zhang Tianyi instead? Was he weaker than Zhang Tianyi? Of course, it was because Zhang Tianyi was famous while he was unknown. Qin Zhao didn't think that it would be good to stand out. Making a fortune in silence was Qin Zhao's principle of life. Chapter 1802. Are you really not going to consider it? That activity is pretty interesting. Do you have any tickets? Leave 2 for me. If it's for participation, then forget it. Fuck off. I don't have any tickets. Just be a circus. Fine. Qin Zhao pursed his lips. I'm done. Hanging up, Qin Zhao raised his voice. Portia, get me a few cans of beer. Portia's face darkened. She walked up to Qin Zhao. Boss, I'm not your maid. Oh, you've already worked for me for a month. I haven't given you your salary yet, right? Portia felt that Qin Zhao was too much of a bully. Gritting her teeth, she stared at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao glanced at Portia. Do you have any objections? No. Do you have any other orders, boss? That's good. Go on, you're blocking my sunlight. Qin Zhao waved his hand. Portia really wanted to tear Qin Zhao into pieces. Just then, the butler said, Master, Miss Demon is calling you. Give me my phone. Portia obediently handed the phone to Qin Zhao. Boss, when are you going to give me my salary? Go away. Don't disturb me. After chasing Portia away, Qin Zhao called Demon's number back. Demon, what's up? Nawat Singh received news that her tribe seems to have been attacked. She's trying to get out of the hospital at all costs. Can you help protect her? Sure, Qin Zhao agreed decisively. I'm going to the hospital. Wait for me. After hanging up, Qin Zhao said to Portia, Portia, I'm going out for a while. Help me take care of Jerlin and Larissa. Okay, boss. My salary, however, Qin Zhao didn't listen to Portia at all. He had already left. Qin Zhao rushed to the hospital. Demon was already helping Nawat Singh get out of the hospital. Nawat Singh's injuries were very serious. She couldn't even stand up. She had to sit in a wheelchair, which was why Demon had called Qin Zhao and asked him to protect her. Nawat Singh looked haggard, although his life was not in danger. But her body was too weak. Chen, you're here. Dalemore had finished the discharge procedures. Seeing Chen Zhao, she immediately went over to greet him. Chen Zhao nodded and turned to look at Navots. Navots, are you okay? Although Navots was in a bad mood, she wouldn't vent her anger. Moreover, Chen Zhao was here to help her. It's all right, but I feel weak, Navots said. I can't do anything about that, Chen Zhao said. You've used too much energy. You can only recover slowly. Navots also understood her current state and nodded slightly. She used Chen Zhao's extraordinary power. She knew very well the price she had to pay for using that power. Normally, it wouldn't be surprising even if he had to pay with his life. Not to mention that he was only lying in bed for half a month. Do your people live in downtown Los Angeles? Notts shook her head. There are large settlements in the city, but my family's settlement is rather remote. It's in the San Antonio mountain forest. Okay, you lead the way. San Antonio Mountain was connected to the LA National Park. It was even larger than downtown Los Angeles, reaching 2,000 square kilometers. It was also very far. The car drove for 2 hours before reaching the entrance of San Antonio Mountain. After that, they couldn't use the car anymore. Navots, how far is it? About 100 kilometers, Navot Singh said. That far? Chen Zhao was surprised. How do your people go back to their families? Helicopter, Not Singh replied. Then I'll fly you in, Chen Zhao said. This was a mountain area. There were no people nearby. Plus, as long as they didn't fly too fast, no radar in space could find Chen Zhao. Dalemore, stay on my back. Chen Zhao carried Dalemore on his back and lifted Navot's wheelchair at the same time. Then he soared into the air. Neither Dalemore nor Nawat Singh had ever enjoyed flying like this. Chen Zhao flew a bit too fast. The air whizzed and slapped their faces. Of course, with Chen Zhao's intentional protection, they didn't feel too uncomfortable. Plus, Chen Zhao wasn't very fast either. Dalemore was very envious. After all, he could fly in the sky without any aircraft. She probably didn't even dare to think about it. Chen, how strong do I have to be to fly like you? Don't think about it, Navot said. That's almost impossible. But the truth is right in front of us. Chen can do it. How strong? Chen Zhao said. So I can't give you a standard answer. Actually, it wasn't that Chen Zhao couldn't give this number at all. According to the supernatural organization's Adu's mana value, he would need about 100,000 Adu's mana value. At least, Chen Zhao had his own small world at this stage. At that time, Chen Zhao already had the ability to fly. However, he could only fly freely after compressing his mana into immortal power. But after that, Chen Zhao could no longer calculate the magic value of the money with the equipment in the association. Chen Zhao didn't know what his current immortal power would be if it was converted into mana. Of course, one didn't have to have 100,000 mana to have the ability to fly. For example, Gaia, Norma, and Jalanash all had between 500 and 2,000 mana. However, they could all fly because of their special characteristics. Gaia and Norma could purely because of their bloodline. Norma could walk in the air after turning into a nightmare, while Gaia could turn into a fire dragon and soar into the sky. Jalanash, on the other hand, had wind elemental magic. However, her flying ability was the weakest. In the distance, Chen Zhao saw a cluster of buildings in the dense forest more than 10 kilometers away. The building wasn't big. There was a building a few stories tall, surrounded by some single houses. There shouldn't be more than 30 families living here. It wasn't as large as Chen Zhao had thought. However, Chen Zhao realized that he couldn't see anyone. He thought it was because he was too far away, but when he got closer, even Jolanash and Navots could see him. Chen Zhao didn't see anyone. Chapter 1803. Chen Zhao placed Daily Moore and Navots on the ground. There wasn't a single person, or rather, not a single living person. There wasn't a single living person in the entire Singh family's residential area. The Singh family's residential area was very small. It was less than 20 hectares in size. It was surrounded by dense forests. In the center was an 8-story building. There were some houses around it, but there were only about 30 households. Chen Zhao pushed Navot's wheelchair. Which way? Chen Zhao asked. Where are they? Where are they? How come there's no one? Navots was also terrified. The people living here were all her family. There weren't many of them, only about 30 households and less than 100 people. But every time she came back, she would see them. It was impossible not to see a single person. There's the smell of blood in the building, Chen Zhao said. Let's go in and take a look. Navot's body trembled. She realized that things weren't good. Chen Zhao patted Navot Singer's shoulder and pushed her inside. After entering the building, there were bloodstains on the ground. Navot's expression worsened. She wanted to speak a few times, wanting to go somewhere else first. But just as the words were about to leave his mouth, he swallowed them back. She was afraid but also wanted to escape. Beside her, Daily Moore's expression was also bad. Just then, there was a knocking sound from the ground. The sound came from afar, but no one was coming. The sound seems to be coming from underground, Chen Zhao said. Is there a secret passage here? I don't know. Navots shook her head. She indeed didn't know there was a secret passage here. Chen Zhao was also surprised. He didn't know what the ground was made of. His little world couldn't even sense the ground. Knock, knock, the sound traveled to the tiles in front. Then there were continuous knocking sounds. Knock, 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 the knocking sounds were disjointed and muffled. This time, it was more hurried and crisp. It seemed like someone was looking for a weak spot and then pounding on the tiles. Navots and Daily Moore were surprised, but they weren't afraid. Chen Zhao was here. There was nothing to be afraid of. Navots had experienced Chen Zhao's power before. She turned around and asked, "What's down there?" "I don't know. I can't sense it." Chen Zhao thought for a moment and didn't say anything else. "Did you find out soon after you lifted the floor tiles?" Chen Zhao went up and crushed the floor tiles. Wow, a child's cry of surprise came from below. Chen Zhao looked down and saw a few kids. When the kids saw Chen Zhao, they immediately turned around and ran back into the tunnel. "It's Axayenli," she recognized one of the voices. "Axayenli, I think it's Axayenli." The children hiding in the underground tunnel heard Navot Singh's voice. One of the girls, who was about 15 or 16 years old, carefully poked her head out. "Sister Navots." Shinli Singh was surprised and overjoyed. She immediately came out of the tunnel. "Come out, it's not the bad guy. It's Sister Knots." 7 or 8 children emerged from the tunnel. They were all younger than Axayenli, ranging from 6 to 12 years old. "Sister Knots, what's wrong?" "I'm fine." "Why are you hiding down there? What happened?" "Mom and Dad gathered us here this morning," Shinli Singh said. "Then they hid us down here." Navot's heart sank. This meant that her people probably knew about the attack. They'd also prepared beforehand and hid the young children. Shinli Singh turned to Chen Zhao and said angrily, "Do you know that you crushed the floor tiles and hit my head?" "Yeah, I know," Chen Zhao said, nodding. If he'd known that there were kids down there, he probably wouldn't have used such a violent method. Of course, he'd already done that. Chen Zhao wouldn't deny it. He wasn't hurt, anyway. "Do you think I won't curse you?" Chen Zhao turned to look at Navots. "Can I hit her?" "Shinli, don't be rude to Chin. He's my helper." Him. How strong is he?" Navots was speechless. "No matter how strong he is, he's definitely stronger than you." "Better than me," Nawat Singh said. "Shouldn't we consider looking for your people?" Chen Zhao reminded. Nawat Singh's mood had just calmed down when she saw the children of her clan. Now, she became serious again and nodded. "Sister Navots, I'll push you." The other children followed around. Chen Zhao walked in front. "These children seem to be awakened bloodlines or witches," Dalymore said. "That's not strange. This should be a special residential area that only accepts spiritualists," Chen Zhao said. "Spells that aren't convenient to use in the outside world can be used here without any restrictions." Ding! The elevator came down and the group entered. "Which floor?" Chen Zhao asked. "8th floor," Shinli Singh answered first. The elevator reached the 8th floor. As soon as they got out, all the children screamed. Bodies. Dozens of bodies. Most of the corpses were the children's relatives. Clearly, there'd been a massacre here. Chen Zhao wasn't used to this. They were spiritualists, but they were actually commoners. Their bodies were piled together. There was a blood-smeared magic array in the middle. Navots covered her mouth. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Dalamore's face was also filled with shock. It was also her first time seeing such a bloody scene. Shinli Singh had already charged forward. She dragged a corpse from the pile of corpses and cried out, "Daddy!" But just then, large amounts of blood suddenly gushed out of the pile. The blood flowed into the magic array in an arc. A blood-colored demon popped its head out of the array. Chen Zhao went up and stepped on the demon's head before it could completely show itself. "Go back." "Ah. Do you know who I am?" "Your head didn't shatter." Chen Zhao didn't care who it was. He attached himself and punched the demon's head. Bang! The demon's head was smashed. But the magic array didn't stop. It still summoned the headless demon. This wasn't the end. A second demon popped out, then a third, a fourth. More and more demons were summoned. Chapter 1804. More than a dozen blood demons were displayed before him. When the children saw these blood-colored demons, they were so scared that their faces turned pale. Dalymore hugged two children who were already scared silly. The two buried their heads in Dalymore's chest, not daring to look at the terrifying demons. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at the demons. "Knots, do you know what they are?" "They're immortal Balik. Balik means demon in our language. They have indestructible bodies." Knots looked at the headless corpse. "Of course, indestructible doesn't work on you." The Romani language was a small language. In the Romani language, immortal meant indestructible bodies, souls that couldn't be purified, and power that couldn't be used up. In the Singh family, immortal Balik was very widespread. Especially the relatives in the settlement, they knew the immortal Balik even better. In the family, immortal Balik was their greatest enemy. Their ancestors had once fought with immortal Balik and successfully killed him after a fierce battle. Chen Zhao twisted off the head of a blood-colored demon. Their joints aren't as hard as their heads, Chen Zhao said. Not Sing and Delamore rolled their eyes a little. Is there a difference to you? On the other hand, Xanli Singus and the other kids were shocked. As inner disciples, they obviously knew about immortal Balak. However, these terrifying Balaks were like bugs. Chen Zhao broke their necks one by one. Or their heads were smashed. It seemed that the legendary immortal Balak wasn't that scary. However, Chen Zhao had to admit that their bodies were indeed very hard. At least, if Chen Zhao didn't use his heavy and high-speed punches, these blood demons could often stand up unharmed. To the weak, their bodies were indeed indestructible. Even armor-piercing bullets from modern weapons probably couldn't penetrate their bodies. Not sighed. In her eyes, these powerful blood demons were so weak. Before Chen Zhao, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. She also knew that Chen Zhao hadn't used his true power. But even so, the power he displayed was already on the level of a crushing suppression. A few minutes later, Chen Zhao killed the last immortal Balak. Chen Zhao didn't use his full power, not even in his normal state. Otherwise, he would have killed them all. Of course, this included the 8-story building. But when Chen Zhao killed the last undying barrack, all the corpses started fusing together. In the end, they merged into a supersized immortal Balak. Human, you didn't expect me to revive again, did you? The blood-red demon looked at Chen Zhao proudly. Yes, I didn't expect that. Chen Zhao nodded. How are you feeling right now? Fear? Despair? Or regret? It's great to be able to kill you again. Chen Zhao didn't care about the rules and attacked directly. He went up and pressed the gigantic blood-colored demon to the ground. The floor collapsed in an instant, falling to the next floor. The lower floor collapsed again, layer by layer, and finally fell to the ground. The ground cracked like a spider web. Everyone came to the hole and looked down. They saw that Chen Zhao was holding the head of the super-large immortal barrack. How did it end so quickly? Everyone couldn't believe it. They'd thought that it would be a huge battle. Especially Nawat Singh. She thought that Chen Zhao would have to use his true power. She could vaguely feel that the super-large immortal barrack's power was already the same as when she'd borrowed Chen Zhao's power. In the end, Chen Zhao surprised her again. It didn't take much effort to finish off this super-large immortal Balak. Everyone came to the bottom floor. Xinli Shingles looked at Chen Zhao in shock. When they first met, she didn't think that Chen Zhao was strong at all. But now, she finally saw Chen Zhao's power. It was even terrifyingly strong. Mr. Chen, help me get revenge. I can pay anything, including myself. Xinli Shingles looked at Chen Zhao, her eyes filled with seriousness and sincerity. If you want to sell yourself to me, you better contact my lawyer and ask if she has a way to bypass the underage protection law. I'm serious. I'm serious too. Chen Zhao shrugged. Not, you have to pay attention to the education of your children. If they only practice magic and don't learn culture, they won't be able to find a job in society. Chen, apart from these children, the others are all dead. Not's expression was extremely dark. Do you know who did it? Warren, the one who attacked me. He's from the Akuk family. Do you have a grudge against him? All the Roma have a grudge against the Akuk family. Nots was angry, but Chen Zhao didn't hear much hatred in her tone. Why? The Akuk family was once the leader of the Roma. Their family once tried to form a country. Isn't that a good thing? You Roma people have never had a real country and have always lived as nomads. This has also caused you Roma people to bear a lot of stigma. If you build a country, you will have more living space and the right to speak. The Akuk family wants to use the lives of all the Roma in exchange for a chance for their family to build a country. Do you think such a country has anything to do with the Roma? At that time, apart from the Akuk family, everyone else with Roma blood will die. And then? Did the Akuk family fail? Of course. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any Roma in the world. So is Warren going to do the same thing again? No, it's impossible for him to succeed. In the past, the Cook family was the leader of the Roma, so the Cook family could sacrifice the entire Roma as a leader. But now, not only are they not the leader of the Roma, but they are also the enemy of the Roma, so they can no longer use this magic to threaten us. So what does the Akuk family want to do? Take revenge on all the Roma. I don't know what they want, but I think they're definitely plotting something. I don't want to know about the plot. Just tell me where the Akuk family lives and where Warren is. Chapter 1805. Most of the time, conspiracies didn't matter. Chen Zhao wasn't a cop. Nawats and the kids only wanted revenge. Therefore, what they pursued was never the truth. The truth only satisfied curiosity. Revenge, on the other hand, brought pleasure. Unfortunately, Nawats didn't know where the Cook family was either. She didn't even know if it was in North America. What do you plan to do with these kids? Chen Zhao asked. I'll take care of them. I'll help too, Dailymore said. There were so many kids and a disabled person. Chen Zhao couldn't fly them out directly. Unless, he tied them all up. Chen Zhao held the end of the rope. But now, the kids were panicking and lost. They were very fragile and couldn't take any stimulation. Chen Zhao decided to just walk out. Not Singh asked Chen Zhao to burn down the entire Singh family's residential area, along with the corpses. In the flames, the kids cried heart-wrenchingly. The fire was like the anger in everyone's heart. Only Chen Zhao was calm. In fact, he was calm inside too. When he first saw the corpses, he was indeed angry. But maybe it was because he was an outsider. The dead and the kids had nothing to do with him. So, Chen Zhao realized that his anger seemed to calm down. Of course, it was mainly because Chen Zhao didn't have so many emotions. Chen Zhao didn't have the thought of seeking justice for them or fighting to the death with the murderers. It wasn't that Chen Zhao didn't have a sense of justice, but it wasn't that strong. The path in the forest was very difficult. But Chen Zhao didn't have much of a choice. The kids could make it through a mountain road of almost 100 kilometers. But Chen Zhao couldn't. Even if they ran on the road, it would take them almost a day to run 100 kilometers. Plus, it was on the mountain road. With the kids' skills, it would take them 2 days even if there were no accidents. After a few hours, the sky was already dark. You guys rest here. I'll go hunting, Chen Zhao said. Dailymore, I'll leave this place to you. Dailymore nodded. Come back quickly. Dailymore looked at the forest and was a bit scared. Chen Zhao flew into the sky. Xanli and the other kids watched Chen Zhao disappear into the night sky with shining eyes. They were all children who had been exposed to magic, although the duration of exposure was different. However, they all knew that spiritualists that could fly were very rare, and most of them were very powerful. Chen Zhao flew back to get the RV. Chen Zhao made a round trip at night. Chen Zhao only needed a few minutes to cover the 200 kilometers. If Chen Zhao used full speed, he would be even faster. However, if the speed was too fast, the body's heat source reaction would be too strong. It was very likely that the American air defense system would capture it and then attack you with a tomahawk for no reason. Therefore, he only flew at a low speed. The round trip took more than 10 minutes. Chen, where's the prey? Daily Moore looked at Chen Zhao's empty hands. Chen Zhao took out the RV. What do you think of this prey? You left just now to get the RV. Daily Moore looked at him in surprise. What's the use of this trailer? Get in. I'll carry it and fly out. It's too troublesome to just walk like this. Both Daily Moore and Nawat Singh looked at Chen Zhao in shock. You can do that. Why not? Let's all go. Soon, the 2 and the 8 kids experienced the feeling of a roller coaster. Chen Zhao supported himself onto the RV. The flying speed wasn't fast, just like a normal car. It wasn't very high either. It was only a few dozen meters above the forest. This experience made the kids forget their pain for now. After an hour, they finally reached the forest. Chen, my house is a bit small. Can you let them stay at your house for the next 2 days? Daily Moore asked. I'll borrow a big house from my mother tomorrow. I need to do some preparation, cleaning and decorating. Sure. Chen Zhao nodded and turned to the kids. You can stay at my place, but you can't use magic. Chen Zhao didn't use a heavy tone. However, the kids clearly still respected Chen Zhao. So, they all nodded obediently. The kids in the RV didn't play or laugh. They were all very quiet. Returning to reality, they fell into pain again. Nawat, your parents aren't among them, right? Chen Zhao could only feel her anger, but not much sadness. My parents passed away long ago. Oh, sorry. It's okay. Nawat didn't take it to heart. What's the future like for these kids? I don't know. No one could answer this question. Send me and Daily Moore home first. After sending them home, Chen Zhao drove home. Fei Lai, have the underlings make dinner. We'll have some special guests. Chen Zhao dialed Fei Lai's number. What guests? A bunch of kids who just lost their parents. Got it. When Chen Zhao drove into the villa, Fei Lai was already waiting for him in the garage. Fei Lai's heart was softer than Chen Zhao's, so she felt sorry for the kids after hearing what had happened. When Chen Zhao brought the kids out of the car, Fei Lai's heart ached even more. Among the kids, the youngest was only 5 or 6 years old. Fei Lai went up and carried the kids. Kids, have you eaten? Chen Zhao and Fei Lai led the kids into the dining room. These children were really hungry. Most of them only ate breakfast and then nothing else. Fei Lai, on the other hand, was completely a waitress. She handed food to this child or poured drinks for that child. Chen Zhao took some food and walked out of the dining room. All the kids were wolfing down the food. Fei Lai suddenly noticed Xinli Singer's gaze. Miss Fei Lai, can you adopt us? Huh? Fei Lai was shocked. She didn't have this thought at all. More accurately, she hadn't thought about it at all. Why do you want me to adopt you? Fei Lai asked, stunned. Fei Lai suddenly realized that she didn't reject it. However, she had to explain it to Chen Zhao. She had to respect his suggestions and opinions. This wasn't a small matter. Adopting any child was a big deal, let alone a group of kids. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.